To the full council meeting, 24th of October 2024, at the Arrowtown Community Centre, Jack Reed Park. A little bit of a discussion in the office this morning. We don't quite remember the last time that the whole Queenstown Lakes District has actually had a meeting in Arrowtown. So, breaking a bit of ground. Not since amalgamation in 1989, so welcome all. Right, apologies. I have one from Councillor Esther Whitehead. No further apologies. Leaves of absence.
30th of October to 4th of May.
Further ones. Well, this last year. Right, okay. I move that the apology from Councillor Whitehead be accepted and any requests for leave of absence be approved. Seconded. Lisa, all those in favour? Aye. Motion carried. Declarations of conflict of interest. Declarations of conflict. None. There are no matters lying on the table. No special announcements. Public forum. We have a long list, 13 today. So you have 3 minutes to speak. I will be a little bit more strict on this one because standing orders state that I've got to have you all done and dusted in 30 minutes, but I'll request we suspend those once the 30 minutes is up. So if you can keep to your time, that would be lovely. First up, Julie Scott.
Good afternoon, councillors. Here today to speak about agenda item 5 for the public housing units in the transport year. I just really wanted to say thank you for the consideration of this item and the transfer. It has been a long time in the coming. I think we first had a discussion with council about this opportunity back in 2009, but back then we were probably quite a young, inexperienced trust. Now we've got 17 years of operations under our belt. Fair to say we're probably very well skilled, experienced and qualified in dealing with social and community housing. So yeah, we're really hoping that this will go through today, and we're looking forward to taking on the units across Arrowtown and Wanaka. We've already been meeting with the current existing tenants and forming relationships with them. I think there's one empty cottage in Arrowtown that we've got a new household moving into next week. So hopefully not jumping the gun too much, not preempting anything. But look, it's really pleasing that this is the recommendation, and we hope that you accept it, and we look forward to continuing to work together to facilitate another 1,000 community homes by 2038, which is our shared goal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant start. Darrell.
I am from Hospitality New Zealand. We represent about 151 members across the Queenstown Lakes District. So I'm here to talk about outdoor dining. So firstly, just a little background, not only does alfresco dining lift the vibrancy of a town centre community, it also builds and promotes a safer environment with extra lighting, extra late night activities and extra people around enjoying the outdoors. In fact, Destination Queenstown recently used some of our alfresco dining spots to showcase our region on their social media, and that post ranks the highest in engagement in the recent months. The police have actually also endorsed it by saying yesterday that they certainly support outdoor dining in terms of the addition of responsible guardians into public spaces, and have held that position for a number of years. These guardians have positive influence by deterring and moderating negative and antisocial behaviours. Regardless of what council has said about indicating the fees would increase, at no point was the fee schedule shared with the public. This means that the public consultation wasn't fully informed, as submitters didn't have a clear idea of to what extent fees would increase, and therefore couldn't endorse or object with full knowledge of what they were endorsing or objecting to. I've also read some comments recently where there was a comparison made to being on par with Christchurch, which is not accurate. Yes, Queenstown's calculation for outdoor dining licences are 30% of the prime rental rate. Christchurch businesses pay a considerably lower per square metre rental rate if their area is larger than 30 square metres, and it actually decreases as it gets larger, meaning the material cost to businesses in Christchurch is far, far lower than Queenstown. Our 2020 table and chairs policy didn't charge a fee for a renewal. As we all know, renewal takes considerable less time as the information stays the same. Not only has that application fee gone up 45%, but it's now the same charge for a renewal. Other councils around the country have significantly less fees to renew if their application fee is higher than about $112. It seems almost trivial to bring the umbrella issue up. However, while we're on this subject, it's important to note that many of our hospitality operators have signed agreements in place with sponsors. So those agreements could be defaulted, which could have financial repercussions. Now, I've heard from multiple members on this outdoor dining rates increase, and a couple of examples I wanted to highlight to you all today. Sunfire have indicated that when they bought their business last year, which was Ivy and Lola's, their legal team underwent strenuous due diligence, as you would, and nothing was found to this subject alerting them of such a dramatic increase, whether that be from a policy or by alerting to a discount being currently applied. This business owner has said they would have drastically reduced their purchase offer if they knew. This increase is blowing budgets out of the water, as no one would expect to budget for an increase on a spend for 200 to 275% in the near future. When Republic bought soda, their due diligence didn't uncover this either. To that note, there is also a pop-up stall selling smash burgers right on Soda's outdoor dining boundary. These new rates would cost Soda 600 a square metres when their diners are in smelling distance of a food vendor riding their coattails. The fact that this pop-up stall can operate without paying and can operate in such close proximity to a commercial operator who is paying for many different fees goes against any good faith that we all keep as top of mind when operating businesses across many different legislations. I'm wrapping it up, nearly done. Now, an example of this, I wanted to give you it in figure format, but if Soda are to be charged $51,000 for their outdoor area, as you proposed, to make that the appropriate ratio of revenue for a hospitality business, they need to sell 728,000 ex GST of food and beverage a year. Given it's so cold outside, it's not a popular place to eat, but it can be a really attractive place to have a drink. Average drink costs about 13. That's 64,000 drinks a year. So if we're saying 6 months, that's 32,000 drinks in 6 months, which is 3,200 a day. Now, lastly, I'll finish with leaving you with a survey that I surveyed our members this week, asking them if they're intending to change their offering as a result of rates increase. 12 people, that's 37%, said they would remove it completely. And 14 are very concerned about viability if they stay the same. That's 44%. I've got a lot more, I can send it to you, you're rushing me off, but thank you very much. What we're asking is for a proper
Thank you,
consultation.
Daryl. It's been, you've gone well over time now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors. I'm Sharon Fifield, representing the Queenstown Business Chamber of Commerce, which includes over 600 local businesses, nearly half of which are based in their CBD. We all know about the ongoing parking challenges in the CBD and the feedback from locals who say they don't visit due to limited parking. This is a critical issue that demands our immediate attention. Further to my email yesterday, previous submissions and letters on behalf of our membership, I urge you to move forward with proposed maximum car parks on the Stanley Street site, which is option 1 in your papers. As for the trees, I think I can sit here now and say Queenstown Business would pretty much match and more your tree policy with replacement tree planting. Our members are expressing serious concerns that the council is taking the vitality of our CBD for granted. There's a growing fear that we may lose this vibrancy, which is essential for our community, especially as we navigate the aftermath of recent upgrades and investments. At the moment, we've got a business confidence survey out, which is closing tomorrow, and I just wanted to read you some verbatim some of the comments that are coming through from our members. This is verbatim. QLDC policies seemingly consistent in driving away business. The council are making it increasingly difficult for CBD businesses. Parking is now $6.20 per hour and difficult to get. People do not want to come to the CBD. It's all too hard and expensive. Our business confidence is extremely low. No one is coming into town. We have no parking or expensive parking from the council and constant roadworks. Another comment. Getting exhausted with the attitude of our council to businesses in the CBD, eliminating every possible car park, discouraging outside dining with 550% plus cost increases, punishing minor parking indiscretions by locals and visitors. And final comment, council activities of car parking compliance and regulatory processing are costing us lost money, time and general malaise. It is also impacting our mental health with stress. Additionally, you've already heard from Darrell, but we're also alarmed by the proposed increases in outdoor dining permits. As for Darrell's survey, she mentioned many businesses now are reconsidering outdoor dining or completely removing it, which could further diminish the vibrancy of our CBD. In these challenging economic times, we ask for a pause on fee increases to allow for consultation. A phased approach, as seen in Tauranga, would provide businesses the ability to adapt and plan accordingly. Your support for our CBD businesses is crucial. A thriving business community is the foundation for achieving our social and cultural goals, ultimately benefiting our entire community. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Globally, September was the second warmest September on record. Among the many consequences of these temperatures, Dunedin has been flooded earlier this month, causing some supply chain and transport issues in the whole region. We need to face the fact that these floods will keep getting worse until we start acting. We already knew that global warming has accelerated during the last decades, but a recent study just showed that the carbon sinks are now collapsing. This means that more carbon will stay in the atmosphere and that the warming of the planet will keep accelerating further. These carbon sinks that we have taken for granted for too long are our ecosystems, our soils, our forests, our oceans, our biodiversity. If we want to avoid complete climate collapse, we need to protect them. After decades of inaction, this is exactly what the Otago Regional Council was trying to do with the new Regional Land and Water Plan, until our ecocidal central government decided to stop them 2 days ago in the name of the war against nature. This setback is the last thing we needed. A recently published report from the World Wildlife Fund shows that globally, wildlife populations have fallen 73% in 50 years. In our lifetime, wildlife on our planet has shrunk from this to this. When we were born, there was that much wildlife on the planet. That's what's left. This is our doing. This is what a dying planet looks like. This collapse is across all species, from insects to mammals, and across all types of ecosystems, from forest to coral reef. And New Zealand is not faring any better than the rest of the world. We have only 33% of our indigenous forests remaining, 20% of our dunes remaining, and 10% of our wetlands remaining. Our soils are drying and eroding. 82% of our native birds are at risk of extinction. 76% of our native freshwater fishes are threatened, and many of our rivers are drying. This collapse is not some kind of unavoidable outcome. This collapse is the collective consequence of all the local decisions we take across the world. From individuals thinking that it is fine to use pesticides in the gardens, to local and national governments who decide to allow polluting activities or not. For a long time, the status quo seemed like a comfortable option, but at this point, to not at least try to change our relationship with the Tayo will not be comfortable for much longer. Some have voiced that the ORC could still legally go ahead with notifying the plan, even if they have to adapt it later to new water regulations. If that is the case, we hope that this council will push the ORC to go ahead with notifying the new land and water plan. If not, well, now you know that with our living carbon sinks, there is no chance for us to avoid complete climate collapse. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Brian Boyle. I'm a retired professor of astrophysics living in Gippsland. Last year, on behalf of the Gippsland Community Association, I developed a successful application for the recognition of the Curragh-Gippsland region as an international dark sky park, the first in Queenstown Lakes. The fast-track proposal by Gippsland Valley Resort to build a 900-home new town with its associated light pollution in the middle of the dark sky park now poses a significant risk to its existence. Without lighting controls, this town will increase the artificial light at night across the fact by factors of 2 to more than 30. The dark sky park was supported by the Gippsland community and the QLDC. Thank you. It was accredited by Dark Sky International on the basis of its existing dark sky, broad community support, low projected population growth for the region, and the dark sky compliant lighting protections in the QLDC district plan and lighting strategy. Thank you again. Such dark sky compliant lighting protections must now also be enforced in the fast track approval process if we are to retain our international accreditation. Given the scale of the development, these protections, while necessary, may still be insufficient to prevent the loss of our dark sky. Nevertheless, a statement from the QLDC about this development and the need for the appropriate lighting ordinance, should it proceed, would be an important first step in reassuring the international dark sky community in mitigating this risk to the imminent loss of our international status. With appropriate lighting protocols, this could even be an opportunity. An international example of a model dark sky friendly lighting town. Without such protections, Queenstown Lakes will lose its first international dark sky place within a year of its recognition. Our Gippsland and the community will ultimately lose its dark sky due to light pollution, along with the environmental protection, well-being benefits and economic opportunities it brings. In my discussion last week with Gippsland Valley Resort, they have indicated they are considering dark sky compliant lighting protocols, but these need to be mandated and policed if we are to retain our dark sky status. The Rio 1992 International Declaration, after all, puts the burden of proof on the polluter, not the polluted. At my presentation to the Dark Sky Conference in Tekapo this week, QLDC's existing lighting protections for the park were greeted with applause by the 150-strong international audience. On the other hand, news of the Gippsland Valley development and the fast-track process were greeted with gasps and dismay of concern. With the loss of our dark sky manor, there is significant reputational damage for Queenstown and New Zealand. By working together, I believe there is a way at least to address the immediate challenge. I look forward to doing so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Q Belk and I have 180 seconds. I am here to ask the QLDC to oppose the fast track proposal to build 900 houses, a school and amenities at Gippsland Valley Resort. I am aware that this proposal and fast tracking are almost as much of a surprise to the council as it is to us, the residents of Gippsland. I have been a resident, landowner and ratepayer in Gippsland for 29 years, which makes me, in spite of my accent, one of the longest lived residents of Gippsland. I value Gippsland for its vineyards, scenery, and global dark sky status. For almost 3 decades, my wife and I have tried to maintain and enhance Gippsland's open space, and we've used our limited funds to support that. In 1999, we bought mining tailings from Naitahu to stop Reed and Salvage subdividing along the Quairau River. In 2017, we bought Waitiri Creek to stop a notorious and bankrupt local developer from subdividing the cricket pitch. And in 2023, we bought a further 5 hectares to stop another developer, an Auckland rich lister. You know these people. All the land has been put into regen pasture for carbon capture. We're not land banking for future subdivision. It's open to all the locals. We maintain the vineyard, the church, the cricket pitch for junior cricket because it adds to Gippsland, not because it makes money, because it doesn't. I believe in the benefits of open space for well-being, not in the housing tracts and strip malls where I grew up. In 2018, we formed the Friends of Gippsland Character Zone to forestall Graham Wilkinson from subdividing the vineyard that he had abandoned and then wanted to subdivide into multiple housing lots. The Gippsland Character Zone is a 1988 QLDC policy statement contained in 23 pages, and we supported the QLDC as S274s, and we had the support of Sir Murray Brennan. We posted roadway signs supporting the QLDC in opposition to the subdivision. I implore you, the QLDC, to oppose this fast track that will be a catastrophe for Gippsland, the Lakes region, and New Zealand. Why is this fast track of 900 houses being pushed now? Is it because the rosy sales projections of a decade ago for high-end resort and timeshares have stalled, and the owner, Las Vegas casino mogul Phil Griffith, whose business I'm aware of because of my former life in banking, wants out? Because there's bank lending behind the resort which could be pulled or could be foreclosed? And where does that leave Gippsland, one of the last areas of open space in the Lakes region? And as residents who provide all manner of services and for tourists who are dependent on ONLs and ONFs, where does that leave us? We will always pander to the developers, in this case, Phil Griffith and Greg Hunt, at the expense of the landscape, the environment, the ratepayers, the residents. I urge the QLDC to oppose this fast track for Gippsland, its Wellington Big Brother imposed policy writ large, which will destroy Gippsland. If the QLDC opposes it, we, the Gippsland residents, we, the members of the Friends of Gippsland Character Zone, which now includes more than 85% of the households in Gippsland, we will support you. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's 170 seconds.
170 seconds.
Rosemary.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rose Cross, Chair of the Gippsland Community Association. The last time I addressed a council meeting, I was over the moon to be applying for a community grant to help establish our very special Kaura Gippsland Dark Sky Park. Now, only 6 months later, I'm feeling quite the opposite, given the potential ramifications the Gippsland Valley Winery fast track proposal to create the 900 dwelling development in Gippsland. The Gippsland Community Association was founded 27 years ago with a mission to protect, preserve and promote the unique characteristics of Gippsland as an area of special character. Our rural community was rocked to the core to learn that the Gippsland Valley Winery proposal, adding potentially 3,000 plus to the current population, a 10-fold increase with no consultation or even a heads up. We understand and appreciate there is a significant need for more affordable housing in our area. However, Gippsland is not the right place for this development. It's not just the threat to the Dark Sky Park that makes Gippsland the wrong place. Recently, on the advice of Civil Defence and in light of other New Zealand disasters, we have ramped up our community preparedness. We've been told it is very likely Gippsland will be cut off in the event of a large quake. We already have an estimated daily influx of up to 1,000 people for wine and adventure tourism that we have had to factor into our emergency preparedness. Given this, adding 3,000 to the population is unwise. Gippsland has few amenities. No town sewage system or water supply, no public transport, affordable supermarkets are 20 kilometres away, there's no easy walk, ride or drive to public schooling, internet connectivity is poor, it's simply not a family-friendly or easy work-from-home location. The costing and resourcing of this development is not environmentally friendly, or is it sustainable? State Highway 6 is an increasingly busy thoroughfare. Large trucks travel through 24/7 and they do not hesitate to use engine brakes. The planned position of the 900 dwellings is very close to the road. This is also not family-friendly. The district plan has identified the best places for housing development in our area for all the right reasons. What's special about Gippsland isn't just enjoyed by myself or my neighbours, but by all New Zealanders and those fortunate enough to visit from around the world. The amenities Gippsland has in place now is of huge value to our country. Gippsland has helped put New Zealand on the world map as a premium wine producing country, and is where tourists come to enjoy an outstanding landscape of hills, a beautiful river, cycle trails, picturesque vines, award-winning cellar doors and their wines. For the year ended March 2023, tourism was New Zealand's second largest export earner. Growing, not destroying New Zealand's tourism is essential to the economic growth of this region and all of New Zealand. Gibston is a tourism destination and it should stay this way. Allowing a 900 dwelling development to happen in Gibston will also seriously damage brand Queenstown. Please, QLDC, help the Gibston communication to continue to protect, preserve and promote Gibston for all the right reasons.
The Gibson Character Zone was created largely through the hard work and foresight of the founder of Gibson Valley Wines, Alan Brady. It is part of the QLDC regulations for Gibson. Alan saw the potential for this incredible and distinct space in New Zealand. He also saw how the geographical confinement made it particularly susceptible to the dangers of reckless development and the derailment of that potential. He saw it and he sought to protect it. Some 30 years ago, this was nearly inconceivable foresight, but here we are today facing exactly that threat. The Character Zone seeks to protect so many things that we hold dear: the vineyards that consistently produce some of the best wines in the world, the visual amenities of a rural landscape, the indigenous biodiversity and ecosystems. He championed the protection of the, quote, life-supporting quality of soils and waters so they are sustained and safeguarded. The zone even protects the beautiful night skies that we all cherish and Professor Boyle has worked so hard to rightfully protect as a dark sky park. On top of this, QLDC has been struggling to provide adequate power and transport infrastructure to support Gibson and the surrounds. So how, in any reasonable context, can a 900-home development be in line with any of this? The answer, it is not. Raise your hands if you believe 900 homes will negatively affect the visual and rural amenities of the landscape, indigenous biodiversity and ecosystems. Keep them raised if 900 homes will negatively affect the life-giving soils of Gibson. Keep them raised if you have been impacted by the water supply systems in Gibson. Keep them raised if you have been affected by the regular power outages due to an infrastructure that cannot cope. Keep them raised if you've been regularly affected by significant congestion on the roads trying to get to work, school, or simply buy groceries. Keep your hands up if you have stepped outside on a clear night and looked up in awe at our beautiful dark sky. Now put your hands down if you think 900 more homes, more than quadrupling our current population, will negatively impact all of the above. The reason we are here is that this application would not have a hope of being consented to the normal pathway. This fast-track application is a callously unethical, reckless, and egregious attempt to circumvent the will of the people, the council requirements, and the council's capability to provide adequate services. The developers know there is no way this would pass under the normal avenues, so are trying to sneak it through without any scrutiny and leave us with the mess, while they line their pockets. This clearly shows that they do not care about the will of the community, council requirements, or the already overstretched infrastructure. If this proceeds, all Alan's hard work and remarkable foresight will be for naught, replaced by short-term greed for the financial gain of a remote few. A precedent will be set emboldening others to ignore the community and council until they get what they want, destroying Gibston as we know it, forever, and we will never get it back. Please do not let this happen. Let Gibston be Gibston. Thank you.
Nikki.
Kia ora and welcome, councillors. Nikki from Arrowtown Promotion and Business Association, and I'm talking today to the full council in relation to the increase in outdoor dining permit on behalf of our members in Arrowtown, affected by this change, two of which, the winery in Patagonia, have multiple businesses in our district. Their biggest concern is not only the average increase of 250% in Arrowtown and over 500 in Queenstown CBD, but that the market rates have been evaluated as a blanket approach versus individual basis that is typically seen in rent negotiations with landlords and factors in the specificity of each tenancy. There is also concern raised on charging a licence to occupy application fee as part of this increase, for each establishment for an existing LTO. At $450 each, that is almost $1,000 and $1.5K respectively for two of our members with multi-locations. How is that acceptable when existing LTO is already in place and nothing will be changing? Consideration for this to be waived or reduced renewals, perhaps a flat fee when applied for multi-location business like in other districts. We also see consideration for seasonal trading, when the reality is some businesses, though not all, are not able to serve diners for outside for half of the year. And many of those same businesses remove those tables May to September and still charge for the full year under this model. Lastly, you cannot ignore the positives around outdoor eating areas that should be factored in. Outdoor dining adds vibrancy and vibe to a town. It increases passive security and surveillance, as well as reduces bad behaviour and increases safety. While the police were unfortunately unavailable to speak today, they were supportive and actually happy for us to quote them around this messaging of safety and reduction in bad behaviour as they see this firsthand on our streets. Outdoor dining adds positive street appeal and visual amenity, something that we believe should be encouraged to support the CBD in light of the significant investment into our town centre by this very council. And even more so when we're seeing what is negatively happening with so many other CBDs nationally around our country. Whilst I appreciate this is not on the agenda specifically, considering the number and weight of issues brought up here today over the last few weeks and in the media and by the businesses, as well as the financial difficulties that our businesses continue to face, the APBE urges the Council to go back to the drawing board on this and take another look at the proposed changes, and where possible adjustments can be made to continue to support our businesses and maintain the vibrancy and safety of downtown Arrowtown. Namibia, thank you.
Thank you.
FYI, Mr. Mayor, on the 18 years that I was on the council, we never had a meeting in Arrowtown. Good day, councillors, council staff, Mr. Mayor. I'm here about the continuing saga of vehicles crashing through the wooden barrier between 125 and 135 Frankton Road. An Armco railing or something similar needs to be erected to protect pedestrians, both private property and QLDC property. Since I have lived in Queenstown, there have been several vehicles that have crashed through the wooden fence. One young woman has died and several have been injured. Property damage at 135 has occurred. In the latest episode, a car crashed through the barrier onto the access way, writing off two cars, bursting into flames adjacent to the steps, preventing an escape from 129. Fortunately, the residents were not upstairs at the time. It careered through and destroyed much of the garden which was planted by Mr. Calvert when he was alive. QLDC cannot say that they are unaware of the problem, as QLDC infrastructure in the form of a small concrete building and a metal cabinet housing telemetry and stormwater equipment was smashed and the whole thing had to be replaced, requiring several $1,000s in repairs and replacement. On a Christmas day during the day, a car came through the barrier, landing on its roof on the accessway. The accessway must be used to get to the signposted track to the lake. By good fortune, nobody was on the accessway at the time. The accessway and the path to the lake are very busy. Some years ago, the QLDC placed a counter on the track which measured over 600 pedestrian movements in one day. That crash took out the power to the neighbouring houses. Cars have gone through the barrier in several places and left hanging over the bank. Somebody should take ownership of this problem, but nobody seems to want to. I've spoken to the QLDC, Aspiring Highways and NZTA about this. It is abundantly clear that the wooden fence is inadequate. This is not an imagined problem, but a very real safety issue borne out by very real facts. I sincerely hope that something comes out of my spending time with you today and that this very real actual safety issue is addressed. Maybe it's time for the QLDC to take over State Highway 6A. The road is the fencing on State Highway 6A has been pitifully ignored. 26 places where the wooden barrier was either missing or broken. It wasn't until I complained bitterly to Aspiring Highways that the fence was repaired. 26 places. Today, there are still 3 places where the Armcore railing on Frankton Road, our entrance to the town, has been damaged, in some cases for years, and yet NZTA have done nothing about it. And that's why I say the council should take over State Highway 68, because you can't do a worse job than what the NZTA is doing. Thank you all for your ongoing work for the community. Good day.
We'll call on the next speaker. I'll move extend the...
No,
Oh, sorry.
we're going to extend.
Oh, extend the public forum. I'll have a mover. Thank you, Barry. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? None. Motion carried. Penny.
Right, I'm speaking on behalf of the piece of paper I got 2 days ago to do with the developers agreement. I believe the purpose of this report is to consider with some urgency the following. You have given me 3 minutes to do so. Listing of the local purpose reserve tree planting, the last remaining parcels of land still owned by Remarkables Park Limited. To go forward, you must know where you have been. The Council has a moral duty and statutory obligation to follow the legal binding document signed and sealed in 1992 called the Tribunal, to which you are a party to. Any variation to this tribunal must go back to the tribunal. This never has occurred. It is also called the law, and council are not above the law, nor is Remarkables Park. You are accountable. Some 32 years have passed, and council has made many mistakes, and have acknowledged this in writing, which Remarkables Park instigated. A caveat is put on Remarkables Park so that they now need to comply in full, and council need to enforce this. Quote from the CEO of 2009. Upon the next subdivision by Remarkables Park is initiated, then necessary legal steps will be taken. So what does subdivision mean? To subdivide. How do you get a lot if you haven't already subdivided? By having all of the gap vested, it will connect the reserves as a whole, as intended back in 1992. This will allow for a total completion for the Riverside Road Riverside Management Plan, which already is running 6 years behind time. This will give all of us, including the community, some closure, not slither by slither, stated by a Remarkables Park surveyor Wednesday the 28th of August of this year, and reiterated by a planner 2 weeks later on the 10th of September, slither by slither. Do you see a pattern here? What's happening? I expect this kind of talk from Remarkables Park, not from council. I believe the developer's agreement is also known as a private developer agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Alistair.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Alistair Clifford. I'm representing Scotland Properties, which owns several commercial buildings within the Queenstown CBD, and by default, I'm also representing many of the businesses operating within those buildings. I'd like to address the issue of street vendors operating in the Queenstown CBD, particularly along the lakefront. I've been engaged with QLDC briefly on this matter for the past 18 months. As you're aware, this issue is not new, and you may recall QLDC providing an update to councillors in March of this year. At that update, you informed that staff were considering more serious steps they could take to ensure compliance, which could include revoking permits, providing formal warnings, and seizing trading equipment. The option of trespass vendors was also being considered, although staff acknowledged that wariness around trespassing people from a public space. Despite receiving repeated assurances that progress has been made, I believe the situation is now actually worse than ever. And even in these cooler days, it is now common to see up to 10 street vendors entrenched in the area from Innswell Park to the KGF Wharf for most of the day. However, under the current bylaw, this area can only accommodate a maximum of 3 vendors who are required to move every hour. We are now seeing street vendors operating outside iCarts on Marine Parade, as well as outside R.M. Williams on Ree Street, well outside the permitted area. The apparent lack of enforcement appears to be encouraging more vendors to operate in the CBD, with the rules being blatantly ignored. It must be noted that when applying for a permit, the applicant must acknowledge no fewer than 3 times that they understand the conditions of activities in public. This is not an attack on street vendors or buskers, as they can add energy and liveliness to the CBD. However, the current situation has now gotten out of control, with many stalls of extremely low quality, stalls operating within metres of each other, impeding public access, and the vast majority not adhering to the current bylaw. It is also doubtful how many of the food operators can meet the same food hygiene standard that imposed on restaurants and cafes. My request is that action is taken to enforce the current bylaw. If the bylaw does not contain the sufficient powers to address the situation, or is deemed not fit for purpose, then it must be reviewed immediately. The current situation cannot continue, and if left unchanged, I speculate will deteriorate further as summer approaches. My fear is the longer this behaviour is left unaddressed, the harder it will be to undo. Finally, it must be remembered that the original intent of the bylaw was to allow street vendors and buskers to operate on council land to add vibrancy to the CBD. It was not intended to enable businesses to be established and operate on prime council land without paying rent or any fees at the expense of our local businesses, our local residents and visitors being able to enjoy the lakefront amenity. Happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Check the time, 1:75. Thank you. Last but not least, Andrew.
Hello, my name is Andrew Bates. I'm here on behalf of Friends of Locase. I have to send my apologies from Mike Hen. He was going to speak, but he is outside in the rain with Lexi from QLDC, trying to sort out the stormwater, so apologies from Mike if he's in. I see you all writing notes, and that's good. The one thing I ask you to do is write down, will the Melligans Road subdivision result in an improvement in the health of Lake Hayes? We have a clause, we have a provision in the district plan, 24242, which all of us as a community and council agreed 2 or 3 years ago. And that basically says that we're not going to allow more development in the basin unless it can improve the quality of water in the lake. That is what we all agreed. So that's what I just want you to think about when you're looking at the Melligans Road and providing input on, what your view is that going to result in improvements in the quality of water in Lake Hayes? All I want you to write down. Just on that though, I'd also tell you that QLDC doesn't have a great track record in terms of this provision. With Ladies Mile, that same provision applies, and yet we do not know how Ladies Mile is going to provide an improvement to the quality of Lake Hayes. We are open. There are simple solutions that will allow the Ladies Mile development to be that can potentially be a positive benefit to Lake Hayes. And Friends of Lake Hayes are here and open to speaking with members of the council as to how that can happen. However, your senior planning people don't seem to be interested in the views of Friends of Lake Hayes. We have some great relationships with people in your team, like Mike and Lexi out there today, running around looking at the stormwater. That's great. So we have some great relationships. But we need those relationships right throughout the whole organisation. That's all I have to ask. Thank you.
Brings public forum to an end. Confirmation of agenda. I move that the agenda be confirmed without addition or alteration, but noting that recommendations relating to 2 items from the Community and Services Committee meeting held on 24 September 2024 that were omitted from the Chief Executive's report have been added. Second. Thank you, Lyle. All those in favour? Against? None. Motion carried. Confirmation of meetings of the minutes. Minutes of meeting, ordinary meeting of the Council held on 19 September 2024.
On page 8, the second paragraph, the second or third line, the bottom of the paragraph talks about unqualified opinion.
So you're saying remove opinion instead of audit instead of opinion?
That was my understanding of the discussion.
I mean, all you need to do really is insert the word unqualified audit opinion. That would clarify that. Yeah, I'd have to check whether it was still an opinion at that point or a final audit. I just can't.
I move the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of 19 September 2024. Do I see that? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Right. Item 1, page 27 of your papers, councillors. 101 from Tyne Road, oxidation and fines, remediation agreement. Just be aware of references of the entire page. How we reference that? We all good? Have you signed?
Thank you, councillors. Just very briefly from me, just a couple of thanks, really, more than anything else. The Valentine Road Oxidation Ponds sub-project has been on the cards for a long time in the Wanaka and Upper area. Ever since, obviously, the ponds have been commissioned in 2008, 2009. It's obviously sat there for quite a while and as a council asset. And certainly the ability now to move forward in our desire to develop a sports hub on that site will, through this agreement, make some progress moving forward. I would like to thank Willow Ridge Developments Limited, Mr. Dippy, Alan Dippy, for his support and his forthrightness in the way in which we've come to an agreement with him. And also Shane Heselwood, who is the new General Manager for Willow Ridge and Central Machine Hire. He's been very practical and straightforward, and we've certainly got to a position where I think we both, while we may not have all come out and very happy, we've come to an agreement essentially that we believe is in the best interest of the Wanaka and Upper Tooka community and the wider district. I'd also like to thank Roger Davison, sitting next to me, our property director, for his assistance in the negotiations, and also in the latter part of the negotiations, Brendan Pete and his legal team as well. I have no further to say.
Questions, councillors?
Just a couple of things. Firstly, one of the disadvantages that's listed for option 2 talks about the possible works may cause dust nuisance issues. Now, I expect that they would be taken care of during the consenting, which is the responsibility of the contractor anyway, so those issues would be mitigated in the process. The only other, I just want to clarify or confirm something for I guess for the record in the long term, and this is in the PX memo, but I can I don't think it's an issue if I just refer to it. There's a reference to the quantity of the earthworks, which is 150,000 cubic metres. There's a dollar symbol in front of the 150,000, so I just want to make sure it's clear that now in the future that it's 150,000 cubic metres and not dollars.
No, it's not dollars. It's definitely cubic metres. Yeah, it's not. No.
I picked that one up before. It used to be centimetres cubed. It's 2 wheelbarrows full.
Certainly not. It's a large volume of clinical. Thank you.
Just through you, Chief, Councillor, regarding the consenting process and the mitigation of dust, we'll be aware at the Hale site, there's 3 separate consents, one of which will be the Otago Regional. There'll be a significant amount of monitoring that's required to progress this site.
Yeah, thank you. And just regarding the Hale, does the Hale site, will the Hale status eventually get lifted, or does it just get managed and sort of put?
My understanding through the consent process that it just gets managed, so it still will be identified on the record as a Hale site. However, it will have also the mitigations recorded against it if the contamination has been sorted out or dealt with.
And that won't provide any ongoing restriction once it's managed?
No. Just through you, Chair, just Councillor, though, one thing to add to Simon's point is obviously there might be discoverables as part of this process, so that could alter that point that you just made. And we know that there's only elements of the site, not the entire site, that might have aspects to consider around restriction of bull or some other forms of assets.
There'll be some bits where you could have building and other bits where you couldn't, and correct. And just only one other question: when they break dirt?
When and if council approve this report.
Like today.
What do you want to do? Matt? Just a pretty easy question here. Under disadvantages of option 2, it's the perception of unfairness from other contractors. Have there been any other contractors that have voiced any perception of unfairness?
No.
Thank you. Lee?
Just a quick technical one for me as well, nothing major. Just at point 30, talk about the Public Works Act and the offer that requirements, and just as in the absence of any evidence produced by the previous land owner contradicting this position, etc., etc. Have we contacted the previous owner?
I had personally had a conversation with them probably a wee while now around the process, and at that time we were trying out the consultation on the sports hub, and we indicated very clearly what our position was, and that we would be going down to transfer across to from the wastewater purpose for other services, and that was done through discipline process.
Excellent, and they raised no concerns?
I wouldn't say to raise no concerns. I think we as simply have a very clear position, legal position.
Okay, right. Would be good to see some info on that later.
Yep.
Any further questions? Right, Lyle, would you like to move?
Please. I'll move.
Mary, second.
Do the
Discussion.
to point 4, and it's merely procedural. I think it's just that we're agreeing something before we've gone through the next item. So point 4, I just think that should be subject to agreement of the public excluded item. We can't, to me, we can't delegate authority to enter an agreement until we've discussed that. So can we just have staff word as subject to at the end of it? I don't foresee any problems. I just think.
No. Sorry. Do we have a second?
Embarrassing.
No. The amendment.
Oh, you moved an amendment?
Okay. So what I'm suggesting, if we look at what we're being asked to do.
No, hang on. There's no discussion. Just tell us what you're moving.
Well, I'm asking for some assistance from the staff if they need that. So point 4 says, delegate the Chief Executive the authority to enter an agreement contract with Willowridge Developments Limited to remediate and complete earthworks at 101 Valentine Road, which is consistent with the terms outlined in the public excluded Valentine Road Agreement Memo dated 24 October 2024. But we haven't yet gone through the public
and agreed the agreement and the contents of that. So all I'm saying is that at the end of that, we say, we either note this is subject to agreement of the public excluded item, otherwise we're agreeing it before we've agreed.
Yeah, hang on, getting into discussion. So, right, if I hear you right, number 4, Councillor Gladding wants to move amendment to forward, noting discussion in PX, along those lines. Do I have a second?
So, hang on, I'm not clear exactly what we're moving. So, we will move.
And just an additional extra few words on 4, stating, subject to discussion and approval in PX.
Right, so we would still move it now, but leave those words in.
Yeah.
Yes, we can discuss it anyway.
Well, it's up to you. Yeah. Hang on. So hang on. So that's it.
I'll second agreement.
Thank you. So just in case anybody's...
Hang on.
Can I speak to amendment?
Now you can just speak. Yep.
Sorry. Okay, so look, we've done this with one of the other items coming up where we've gone sort of subject to. There's no point discussing the item on the detail of the agreement, which is only discussed in PX, if we've already agreed. So item point 4 is, as it's written, is agreeing to that PX item ahead of the discussion. So all I'm saying, I don't see any issue with it, is just let's not agree the PX item before we've discussed it.
Mr Chair, my view when we came to the community board, there were no issues raised when we were discussing this item. I heard questions raised by the members except for a point raised by Gavin about the PX item. So based on that, there was no intention that we'd have to even address the PX item because it's been addressed here. So I don't believe that it's necessary to put a subject to that. Otherwise, people would have raised the requirement to want to talk at public exclusion. That's what we did at the community board. We had the opportunity during the public session to say, yes, we wanted to discuss it in public excluded, and they'd already read the public excluded item, so they said no. And so I don't see the need for this. Otherwise, you would have raised it. You would have raised it in the question time.
Yeah, I agree with Vile. I feel like already it is, which is consistent with the terms outlined in public excluded, which we have an opportunity to change in public excluded if we want anyway. Would that be correct? So it allows that already.
I'll just say that the councillors are fully aware of the commercial terms of the agreement. They're either going to agree to them on that basis or not. I think we're tying ourselves in knots a little bit. And I would, I think we can have confidence we can move on with it as is.
Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Of the amendment.
Of the amendment, yeah. Proceed. All those against? Motion declined. Back to the substantial part of the motion. We've got Lyle and Barry. Discussion.
Only that, look, I'm really pleased we've got here. This is an incredibly unique situation where we have a mutually beneficial situation. We have a need and we have a willing provider who's uniquely placed, not just in Wanaka, but probably within the lower South Island to provide that need. It will potentially actually save us cost and time in the long run. Well, it should actually. We cannot do it any other way that is cheaper, more affordable, or more effective than we can in this situation. So I fully support it, and I'm really pleased that this will provide the first stepping stone to unlocking massive, this is 50 acres, 20 hectares of public space for the public good, and purely, that meets the needs of hundreds of submissions we received during the long-term plan process over time. I just think there is very little downside. I fully support it if I want to crack on.
Yeah. Oh, you moved it. You moved it so if you speak, no one else can speak after you. So I'll just check. Any further discussion before I hand it over to Lyle? Go for it, Lyle.
I just want to reiterate what Brendan or Councillor Smith said. Also reiterate the thanks that Simon talked to. We've worked on this for a long time. It's a really significant project for our district. It will provide a huge asset for our district. And the work that Ken, Simon and Roger have done on this and their team is really commendable. I do also have to reiterate the thanks to the developer and his manager Shane. Yes, it is a bit of a win-win situation, but he is putting a lot into it for the community. And I think it's a major milestone for the development in the district and in particular up in Clutha. And we look forward to what it's going to provide for the future. So thank you very much to the team. And I'm really pleased with the councillors for supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, all those in favour? All those against? None. Motion carried. Move on. I just want to say, Chief Executive, just to pass on councillor's thanks. Well done. Right, number 2, Stanley Car Park, page 35. Car park. Who's picking this one? Oh, Roger.
Thank you. Well, you've heard from the Chamber today the desire for more car parking to be made available for the CBD. And with the removal of the old Performing Arts building out at Country Lane, it's given us the opportunity on the Stanley Street site to provide some additional car parking. There's some options in the paper balancing the known site constraints, which we've tabled for discussion. Our view is in favour of option 1. It gives the maximum number of car parks, but we are mindful of the tree policy in respect to the trees that are existing on site. So have a report attached to the council report detailing the value of the trees and the rating that each tree has. So have any more to elaborate on the paper as such?
Questions, councillors?
Have we got any indication of any other car parking coming online, either private or public?
Not that I'm aware of. Maybe the main street car park is got there, but on the river we've got the lake view, which has not been well used. In terms of this area, once the Alliance comes out of that later area, that will be the car parking area that's around Harbour Town.
And one other question, have we given consideration, I'm not quite sure what applies after 6 p.m. as far as, is it free parking after 6 to encourage use of our hospitality and entertainment sector in our public car parks, or do we charge 24/7?
No, I think it's 3 or 6.
Yeah, 3 or 6.
So there's, in terms of the way that the area is charged, it's always available to meet that.
And is that a consideration of this proposal, that parking would be?
This proposal is solely about the physical space itself.
Not about the charging regime at this point?
We've made a comment in there that will keep the charging as consistent with the rest of the area. Okay. But that is subject to council deliberations and determinations on an ongoing basis around all the car parking areas. So we wouldn't specify on here, this is just the physical space.
And do you think we might be able to get creative about any of the trees that might be removed, as far as things like taking cuttings from apple trees or cones from unusual trees and trying to propagate some of the heritage elsewhere as part of the removal? But that's just a suggestion of creativity. It doesn't need to be a requirement.
We do have Adrian who might be able to answer some of any particular questions, but I don't know if that's done with the answer.
I certainly would welcome any creativity.
Happy to be able to see reservoir if required. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Yeah, thank you. Just one question. It seems that there's 2 of the higher value trees are right on the boundary or close to the boundary. Is there room to sort of tweak it to retain 2 high value trees at the expense of 2 or 3 car parks? Maybe incorporate some bike parking or something.
You doing on the Stanley Street side?
No, the other side.
The other side against the parking lot or the.
It might be the case there's some on Stanley Street too, I'm not sure, but are there minor amendments that can be made that retain some of the high value trees?
The two that are listed in the report,
What's the different ones?
they're on the corners on that street, so
The ones in the bottom.
yeah, they'll be saved.
They'll be safe, yeah, but I'm talking about the ones within the
In the
middle part, predominantly.
I mean, potentially you could start to get into the difficulties of the site and talking to Stephen's not here, you made a comment. It's very hard to save one tree on its own. You need a bit of an enclave, a cluster.
That, yeah, that's correct. Given the close proximity of those other cultural assets, it does become much more challenging when they're in close proximity.
So it's just due to sheltering of wind from one another.
Because of the, I guess, the intertwined root ball.
Okay.
The trees effectively come off.
Alright, for the 2-for-1 tree policy, what is the cost, what is the cost of the, I guess, 36 trees or 38 trees that we would need to replant to replace the 17, and where would they be planted?
I'll turn again to Adrian.
Indicative values for the 2-for-1 policy is circa $21,000.
Per tree, or that's for the
Collective.
36?
And that includes aftercare, which is typically the care applied within the first 3 years before that tree is deemed to be, I guess, resilient or self-sustainable.
And where will they be planted?
That's not considered
You
here.
have
Where would they, are they usually planted close to where they're taken out, or it's just somewhere in the district?
Raw Parks is the custodian of the district-wide tree planting program, and I would, my assumption is that they would be integrated into that program, and the subject matter experts will decide on the best locations.
So anyway, and that 21k, is that included in the costings that we've got for each of the projects, or that's on top of that?
No, that's included in those costings.
Thank you. Couple of questions. So, in option 1, preferred option, the design there, there's sort of an interchange in the middle of the car park. Just wondering why that is necessarily needed, and it may give you an extra 6 car parks as a result if you take that out.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
You end up with long corridors and people just circulate around and around if you actually can give a break in the middle. But we can review that with the traffic engineers at the time.
I think it's also a pedestrian route through to the Stanley Street. See,
Oh, I see. There's a little pedestrian route, yeah.
but it is quite a long, elongated side of that.
Secondly, I know, Roger, you and I have had a little bit of correspondence here around the value of each car park, but I guess for anyone listening, could you give us a bit of an understanding about how you got to the 90,000 per year additional revenue off the bigger extended car park or maximum car park design?
12 extra car parks at $3 an hour and 80% occupancy, 7,500 a day, so multiply that out by...
And is that conservative?
Yes.
So it could be more.
Yes, we hope that 80% occupancy is what we've monitored on.
Just note there, of course, the car parks ebb and flow.
Yeah.
The older Stanley, the old Stanley Street, that was always full before the Alliance came in. Since that time, even these 2 parks have ebbed and flowed in terms of occupation. The parking is also, if you talk about city parking provision, there's always hopefully some provision of parking when people come in. If there's never any parking at all, it becomes actually a distance centre. But there's also the note in here around, I suppose, the passenger transport and trying to get people out of cars as well. So this is about the
Hi, just Adrian, through chair. When we're dealing with moving trees one other time, Monica, the option of, because you can actually, those trees there, I had a look at them, they're not that big, and the option of actually taking those trees and replanting them somewhere, you've got the ability to do that with some trees. We were asked to do that on the golf course in Monica, see if we could, we got a machine come in, take them out. Is that an option or being considered? Not, no, it's quite an expensive option, I understand.
Yes, has been considered. Some of the considerations we take in that regard is the season. That activity is usually done in autumn. I guess the activity of transplanting trees is relatively difficult with a historically poor success rate. That's the nature of the business or the activity. In addition to that, the close proximity of those trees where the root ball becomes intertwined, again, becomes very challenging for equipment to come in and, I guess, separate those trees without being damaging the health of the tree. So it was considered, but not considered to be terribly viable.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Just got a few. Have we talked at all to Harper Lodge in Whitehead about this?
I'm not aware of any discussion. Paul? No.
Okay, thank you. Next question is just around risk. So option 1 requires a lot more earthworks, obviously, in the removal of the retaining wall, and we also, the paper also speaks to risk around iwi consultation. Should we choose an option that requires more significant earthworks? So I'm assuming that there's a relatively early design. Would that be correct? Like, if all of these well developed?
I think there is well developed, and it's always subject to detailed design, but besides pretty long known, it's been clear. We're not expecting a lot of unknown stuff. There's been some appendix lines out there at the moment doing the temporary coach parking. I'm not expecting, I'm turning to James, the project manager, I'm not expecting that it's an unknown site with huge risk associated.
Okay, just in terms of the design, I was thinking that. So, in your opinion, looking at the two options, which has greater risk of cost escalation?
You don't need to answer that, it's for us to
I don't know,
decide.
sorry, I couldn't answer that. I mean, for both.
Sorry, that's a risk question, just around the design.
I've made the decision, you don't have to answer it.
Right, okay. Next question, just quickly, tree policy states, consider tree removal for public works only if all available alternatives have been explored and are not viable. Do you have any comment on compliance with that policy?
The reason for the removal of trees in this case is because of the car parking. So, and that's why we're giving a passment to you for that decision, because there was a question mark for the car parking. There is car parking available, is there sufficient car parking? We can't put car parking in many places, there's we've got this conflict. That's my response to it. That's why we come here for a decision.
And finally, last one just quickly, around the climate and biodiversity plan, there's a couple of actions in there, 2.5 and 2.3 about providing accessible cycle and micro-mobility car parking in the town centres and incentivising EV uptake. I just couldn't tell from the design if we have bike parking in there close to the bus stop, and if we had, I think there was some EV charging points, but it would be good to just speak to.
I think we are looking at some EV charging points. There are some bike parks beside the bus stops at the moment, but we can certainly look to if there's more opportunity for those. But
Thank you.
I think we've got them.
Yeah, it was just Sable Parks, the
Sable Park
corner.
Just one from me, you talk about the disadvantage of option 2 being traffic circulation within the car park. Can you just expand on that? What was the advice given to you on that?
You have evening corridors, so you've got to provide people drive down, there's no car park, so you almost have to do a 4.5-point turn to turn around and come back, which takes up a lot of space and a lot of funkiness. People don't like going down evening corridors. Option 1 gives circulation, albeit along central corridor, while that's why the breaks in the middle. It's more intuitive for people and understand that a lot of not familiar people, new people coming to town, not familiar with that car park, and they'll drive in and the dead end will just cause congestion and angst, for want of a better word.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Just one quick one. Some of the car parks are shaded a bluish colour. Are they blank ones? Are they for manoeuvring or what are they?
On option 2, that's what they are. They're spaces you just can't use for a car park because you need people to back in and around it.
So option is one, at least an option. One.
Yeah, that's just, you can't park a car right into a corner because that person then can't back out against a wall. They back out.
The two on option two, the two up at that top end, I guess facilitate someone who's gone up there and found those spaces to be able to turn around.
That's the 4 to 5 point turn that I talked to you about, which
I'm sure you could do it in two.
you possibly can, but some of the visitors to the car park might not be able to. Yeah, we'll call it a 3 point turn, but better phrase.
Any further questions? I'll move 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5. Do I have a second? Thank you, Matt. Discussion?
A few things. Firstly, we had 2 workshops on this, and we discussed it at the council meeting earlier this year. My recollection, and maybe I'm wrong, but is that in each of those, we've had a preference to try and retain as many trees as was possible, but still being able to provide a significant amount of parking. I don't think option 1 follows those directions or those preferences. I think option 2 is more along the lines of what we've previously discussed, and certainly, as I said, my recollection is that the majority were more in favour of at least retaining some of those trees. I mean, I guess for me this is a temporary solution, isn't it, for a site that has other plans for it in the future. I'm uncomfortable with removing a whole lot of trees which have got a value for 12 car parks. I also think that option 2 could be rejigged slightly to provide almost all of those 12 car parks and retain almost all of those trees. And the group on that more than boundary. There's also in my mind, and I've asked this question at the workshop, why are we going down the road of paving and sealing this car park when we've got on the other side of Ballarat Street a car park that's functioned perfectly well for a long period of time until it's been recently unavailable for use that hasn't been sealed. And I think there was a potential consenting issue and maybe a storm and drainage issue, but the site on the other side of Ballarat Street seems to have been able to perform perfectly well for a significant period of time as an unsealed gravel car park. We've got in the report an interim option until the beginning of next year, which is basically that anyway. Part of that period of time, part of it's being used as a coach stop while other work goes on in the vicinity, but I'm just not clear why we can't retain it as a gravel car park without spending significant money on it and still achieve the parking requirements. The other thing that makes me uneasy is that, again, talking about the Ballarat Street car park on the other side of the road, is that we've got a car park there that has a significant number of parks in it that we've not been able to use. And for some reason, the contractor that's using it seems to still think they need it for another year, which I can't understand. And if we're so concerned about parking, why aren't we getting that car park back into use? And particularly, like I say, we're talking about 12 extra car parks for a significant amount of tree loss. The other thing I've noticed with the value of the trees in this is that for option 1, the value that's given there are for 2 trees that are outside of the car park and are not even part of the discussion. They are the two yew trees that are not even considered for removal. So when you look at option 1, the tree value retained is actually $0 compared to what would be the tree value retained for option 2, which is more like 100,000 when you again remove the value of those 2 yew trees which aren't part of the discussion. But to finish off, I looked up something which was interesting to me, and I found some words written by Jane Mitchell in 1970, where she went to Hawaii and looked out of her hotel room window in the morning and saw some nice mountains in the distance, and then looked down and saw a car park, and she said it broke her heart. And that is what led her to writing Big Yellow Taxi, which has the words, "They paved paradise and put up a parking lot." So thank you.
I echo a lot of what Evan said as well. I would like to move an amendment to 5 to approve
I'll have to stop you because you can't move a motion directly. You get it to one next.
What do you mean?
You can't option one to option.
No, negative would be not to be put in
Maybe
the
it's,
cover.
it's directly counted. Because option one is the options, option one or option two. If option one doesn't go ahead, option two happens.
Can't I get some governance
I don't
advice
think
on
that
that?
there's an option 3 in there though. So if option 1 doesn't go ahead,
So you could move the motion,
Okay.
to adopt option 2.
Okay. Go.
so can I move a motion? Move a motion that we change option 0.5 to approve the construction of option 2. I don't know what we need to then remove after that to make it.
I think you would just,
Or
I think
that we just have it full stop.
And I would be happy to second that.
Okay.
Do I get to speak first?
No, you speak first and speak last, whatever you want to go for.
Oh, or?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll speak last.
Okay.
Okay, I'll speak first.
Oh. Go first. All right, I'm going to go first. So I've got a few points on this. I echo a lot of what Gavin has said already, and I think I was part of the Manawa panel that put the maximised car parks in, and I do want to emphasise that it's maximised, not maximum. So there was consideration and there was submissions, both written and heard, about green spaces and trees. So I do believe that the 17 trees for the 12 car parks is not a good, I guess, use for that tiny little space. I think we need to preserve the opportunity for the many possible uses of that site in the future. So the car park is a short-term measure on that site. We have done a lot of work into maximising the potential for that site. We don't know what the overall site will look like in the future, what Manawa will look like, whether it's performing arts, whether it's a hotel, whether it's a cab, whether it's a car parking building, whether it's a conference centre. I believe keeping those 17 trees at the moment unlocks the potential for those still to be there in the future with whatever that site might look like. It's an old play centre playground, which must have been one of the most beautiful play centre playgrounds there was for children to explore. That little block where those 17 trees is would preserve that for people waiting at the bus stop. It preserves it for any opportunity in the future. I totally understand the pressures from the business community on parking, but there is the other parking that will come online next year next to it. I don't believe the 12 car parks will make a huge difference, but the trees will make a huge difference. So I do believe it's a short-term solution, destroying those trees, and it's going to have long-term consequences, and I think preserving them is the best option for us now. So I really urge people to think about preserving that tiny little bit of history and nature in the centre of town. So please consider that.
Maggie?
Oh, thank you. Look, just want to echo what Gavin and Mel have said. Just a couple of additional things. I'm really struggling, given that we've got a tree policy, and policy 4.6 of the tree policy requires the following: consider tree removal for public works only where all available alternatives have been explored and are not viable. Option 2 is viable. It's a viable car park. It retains 17 trees, and yes, we have 12 less car parks, but there's more car parking coming online. So, yeah, in terms of the tree policy, I don't see how we can approve this. We've got a destination management plan that looks to ensure that, I guess, tourism doesn't undermine our social, economic and cultural values. And these trees have value to people. They have value in terms of, I guess, people who have been at that place and to people who have lived in this town for a long time. There will be attachments to those trees. They are of value for our biodiversity. They are value in terms of shade. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into car parks and they're stinking hot in the middle of summer, and you go and you want to wind down the windows and the kids just sit outside while the car cools down a bit to get in. You leave a patch of trees in the middle, you get that. You get value in terms of the stormwater that it's going to suck up. I just, the 12 car parks, I can't see how all of that loss, which hasn't been quantified, is justified. So yeah, fully back up what Kevin said, fully back up what Mel said, and I hope that people will think wider than just the value of those 12 car parks, which, I'm just going to add something here, I'm still not understanding in terms of value how we assume both are 80% occupied, because if you're going to have 80% occupancy in option 1 with more car parks, I'm sure you're going to assume that the second option is pretty much full most of the time, which is going to give you greater, in terms of revenue. So look, it's just untenable to me to pull out those 17 trees for 12 car parks. Go down the next.
Yeah, well, I take the opposite position on this. I strongly support option 1, so I wouldn't support the amendment. We're talking, I looked at the trees, they're small, we looked at there's trees all around that site. You've got to bring space on the corner. If you're going to have your children playing around under trees in the car park, you're at risk. In the place of 17 trees, we're going to get 34 trees. So you're going to get twice the value. And most probably in a better place. As we heard, these trees are close together, they're going to be hard to maintain in the future. And to get the best value, I was also on the Manawa hearing, to get the best value, and as the submitters wanted, in the LPP, they wanted more car parking in town. And this is the interim use of it, so the trees are going to go up sometime to get the true value of that site. I can almost assure you of that. I think we should cut to the chase. Yeah, you might say it's only 12 more car parks, but if you're that 11th or 12th person trying to find a park, it's very, very valuable, as I found this morning in Wanaka. So, yeah, I don't support the amendment, and I strongly support option 1. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. I've really wavered on this one, and through the participation in the workshops, and as an Arrowtown Ward councillor, we are really quite passionate about trees in this district, and have had to make some hard calls on other tree decisions. As far as hearing from our community, I really have to acknowledge our business community and other participants in our community who are really shouting out to us that they are leaving the CBD because it is not viable for them to operate in there. My question earlier was, what other parking do we have coming online? The stuff that's used as a sit down at the moment, that used to be parking for our CBD. We took it off them. I'm not hearing about the original plan for Manawa being, car parking was always going to be part of the picture. There were going to be whole car park buildings in various locations around the CBD, and we're still probably decades off seeing any of that materialise. So I believe our transport solutions within the CBD is one of our biggest challenges. It won't just be solved by car parking. It will need other solutions, but here is one way that we can try and work towards how do we encourage people back into Tahuna. I think option 2 with the lack of circulation is something we haven't given enough consideration to. Option 1 and being able to keep traffic flowing. Part of the congestion already in the CBD is people rat-mazing through the one-way system, circulating around, trying to find parks if they turn left into that CBD area. So the more that we can get them into parking as they head down into town. You know, I've sort of got some flexibility around the rates charged. I think $6 an hour for parking in a world-class destination like that, I don't think it's too excessive. If you do the maths on it, either $3 or $6 is not going to be worker parking because that is just too expensive to maintain. So if you are going in during the day or you're particularly a visitor to the district, perhaps it can carry a little more charge there, but I really like the consideration of giving after 6 some balance there to really act as an incentive to get in there, use our fantastic restaurants, have a look at those street upgrades and really try and bring that vitality back into our CBD. Just see us slapping the CBD at many opportunities. So I have changed. I started out at the workshops going, save the apple tree, save the cones off that unique specimen. Instead, I'm like, give me a branch and I'll try and sprout the thing, but put more car parks in there. Thanks.
So I fully support option one, which is maximise the car parks. I've been speaking a lot with the local business community in the CBD, and for many, many years now they've been asking for one main thing, and that's car parking, which they have not received. What they have received is a list of things: COVID, removal of car parks, disruptions from upgrades for these street upgrades, targeted rates, parking enforcement, outdoor dining rates increases, and a sluggish economy. They've had it really bad. It's been a tough 4 years for this CBD business community, and this council hasn't really helped them that much. All they're asking for is some decent car parking. Now, hey look, I don't like chopping down trees as much as anybody else does, but I'm going to take a common sense approach to this, which is right tree, right place. Now, every plan I've seen for that site has been to develop it, and the trees do not exist in any of those plans that I've seen. They are targeted to be removed at some stage, whether it's in this term or next term or whatever. They aren't going to be there probably in 50 years' time when I look back. There's potential for an additional 90 to 100k of revenue from those 12 car parks. That could be used and filtered back into the CBD economy somehow. So I'm not saying that that's what might happen, but that's 90 to 100k back to the ratepayers. So yes, there's 12 car parks, but there's very little space in the CBD left where there are going to be car parks available for our business community. So I'd like to just say, I'd like to think this council would also support our economy as well as our environment and our community. Thank you.
Look, I agree that I've gone back and forth on this as well. I do want to point out that one of the previous plans that we had for this site included another exit through near the beach shop, which removed significant mature trees as well. So this does make some compromises around only accessing from the Ballarat Street site. It does protect those, at least in the... So is that a reserve on the corner? It is, isn't it? And just going back to that point, that the integrated transport plan that we had for the town centre said that we were going to provide 1,100 additional car parks. Now, we've done Boundary Street, we've done Rec Grounds, not Boundary Street, anyway, one next to the council. We've done the Rec Grounds in terms of investigating parking building options, and invariably they're unviable, and so we're and they cost way too much. So we have to make the most of ground level parking where we have the opportunity to. I agree that I'm not in favour of willy-nilly cutting out trees. But the writing's on the wall for these. It's not if, it's sort of when, and in the meantime we have to optimise providing some parking, unfortunately. And yeah, I'm leaning to option one at this point.
Thank you. You fit?
Oh, just for the chair, excuse me. I'll just keep it brief, you know. Until recent times, being a regular CBD dweller, I've been the target as an elected representative of constant lobbying and also yelping around car parking in the CBD, so I'll support option one. Thank you.
So just to round it off, and I'll let you have a reply. Like obviously I stand by option one. Placing is not there. They can't wait 2 years for another car park. The voices I hear from CBD and the businesses is that they are struggling. They need every extra bit of help they can. Am I going to put a tree in front of somebody's livelihood? No. I'd rather we make the best use of that site for car parking right now. We haven't, as the Deputy Mayor said, we have an integrated transport plan that actually stated we would provide car parking, and we have not. We have come to the well so many times when I said at this council about providing car parks, and we have walked away. It's about time we actually put car parks on and actually revitalise the CBD drive locals into the CBD. It is Queenstown. I get the impression from some of you that you have taken Queenstown CBD for granted and just said that will do as it always has and perform for us. It won't. We actually have to show it some love and actually show it that it is the jewel of Queenstown Lakes District. It is the economic driver of this district, and we have to provide and help it. And I get a little bit disappointed and pretty frustrated when we come up with all these strategies, all these outputs to drive quality of life here and outputs that we need to bring this city tomorrow forward for the future, and we walk away. So I do not support option 2. We've got very limited space. Option 1 is where I'll be going for. And with that, hand it over to you, Mel.
Right. Thank you, and thanks for everybody's comments. Option 2 isn't stopping all car parking. There is still a lot of car parking. It's still 61 parks that are going to be provided. So option 2 isn't an anti-car parking. It's just preserve the trees while we can option to provide more options for that site in the future. Thank you.
Okay, I'll put it to the
Can
vote.
we take them separately, please, so that 5 is...
No, this is just the amendment.
This is just the
Oh,
amendment.
sorry, it is 2. Thank you.
Okay, a mover and a seconder just for the amendment, changing option 1 to option 2. All those in favour? All those against? Motion failed. Back to the substantive motion. I was the mover. Who was the seconder? I've got to remember you, Matt. Right. Discussion. I think we've exhausted ourselves with this one.
No, I'm trying to think anyway.
Another go, Nikki?
A couple more words. So I just, Pierre comes and speaks to us every meeting, and we're talking about climate change, and today he mentioned that the cumulative effects of our decisions are what matters. And we keep making little decisions, and this government's making a bunch of decisions that put the economy first. Don't worry about the trees, don't worry about the water, don't worry about the soil, don't worry about any of it, because everybody's livelihoods are more important. Well, you need to have a longer view, because future livelihoods matter too. And the way we're going with all these little cumulative decisions, our kids are going to have a really rough time. So I'm really disappointed with some of the discussion. I'm really disappointed with actually, I say it, our business community, because the environment in that CBD matters, and what matters to people matters. And I really thought with that destination management plan we might be heading in a slightly different direction, where we gave consideration to things like trees when we thought about climate change. And we're just not. We're unable to get off the track, and we need to get off the track fast. There are so many car parks available that are not being used in that town. I'm going to put it to you that it's not just the lack of car parks that's not bringing locals into the CBD. It's the offerings in there at the same time that is not bringing people into the CBD. They can get what they need elsewhere, and they're not going to brave the traffic and all of that to come in. So it's not just about car parks. You know, if we want locals to come back into the CBD, there's a much wider range of things that we need to address and change. So yeah, I just needed to say my piece on that, and I definitely won't be supporting point 5.
Am I the last one to speak, or is it?
Could be me.
No, I'm not going to. I've given my rant, so that's fine. I just want to put it a challenge to the business community, because I just heard Sharon say that they'll match the ratio of tree planting. I challenge you to do a 1 to 10 ratio from the business community, and that's funded by the business community to show your support if we do choose option 1.
Good challenge.
Just on that, Matt, just make sure you talk to our parks team. Every tree has its right place.
Might be in the private area.
Yeah, exactly. Look, talk about future livelihoods. Yeah, we're going to supply 34 trees and not 17. We talk about the destination management plan. One of the key drivers for the destination management plan is integrating the locals with our visitors, and actually making them mingle in the CBD. And this certainly maximises that opportunity. So I'll leave it there. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, this is for option 1.
Sorry, you're doing points. So of the points that we're going through, there's 1 to 5. Which ones are you putting?
I'm putting all 5.
Can you please take 5 separately, because I don't want to be seen as disagreeing with car park. I'm quite happy for 2 to go ahead. but I
Let's
just
do
think
1
option
through to 3. And then one to 4. We'll do 1 to 4. All those in favour? Against? And now 5. All those in favour? All those against?
we just get noted, Jen?
Motion carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 3, page 59 of your papers.
Good afternoon. It brings me great pleasure to be the new GM and to be introducing this paper. So this is one of our regular kind of quarterly reports. We're talking about reforecasting of capital program, and you might draw your attention to figure 1, and it's got a nice little table. In that table, it's showing you that you've already approved the red box, which is the carry forwards, and all we're doing today is a 3.28 million difference, actually a reduction in our capital program for the next current year. And that's what we're talking about in this report. And any of those future adjustments in those outer years, we'll pick those up in future annual plans and long-term plans. But it's just to show you all those movements in accumulation. So as stated in the report, there's 2 kind of categories of changes. There's the required changes, so the NZTA changes, and that's come through from the national Locus funding. And then there's some optional changes that staff and the community have suggested. All. So if there's any questions that you've got, Jeremy will answer those.
Questions? We are the authors. Questions?
I do, and I apologise if it's a curly one for you first. Look, there's a range of reasons we have to reforecast things. Sometimes they're things that are outside of our control, or that we're conscious decisions we're making because they improve delivery, bring things forward, whatever it is. There's also some that we have to make because things are run over time, are running over budget. The problem that I have is that by agreeing to a reforecast, we're agreeing that overruns of time and costs are then deemed a success in the delivery. So I want to know, how do we separate the conscious decisions we are making versus the overruns and over costs of projects that we don't want and don't represent good performance of the organisation? And how do we separate those in the reforecast?
That's something I can answer. So I think we've long had this as a process, and I would disagree that actually because we reforecast projects, that's simply a reflection of poor performance. We know that any budget is just that, a budget, and the reality will be when we go to market, we won't know what we go to market until we go to market. So there will be instances where timing comes into it, where we have additional complexity. I think we've had a good, strong process for many years that allows us to move projects and funding around to make sure that while we're delivering on the program, we're staying within the overall framework that we've established as council. So I think the fact that we highlight line by line those projects where there are movements, and I think Jeremy and staff can explain where those movements have occurred, and I think that's a sound process for us to actually continue with.
But doesn't it then mean that it's impossible for a project, if they're reforecast all the time, it's impossible for a project to be over time or over budget because those things are negated by the reforecast.
Well, I think.
And I accept your point that there are reasons, there are valid reasons things that, do change in terms of the cost, but sometimes they are performance related as well, in terms of us not delivering projects as fast as we should, or being tight enough with our cost estimates or our... Well, I'm just trying to ask how do we distinguish those things and how do we separate them, because we can't just simply neutralise every delay and every cost overrun by reforecasting it every time.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, come back to the point that council endeavours to deliver on the program it does. There's a very simple way to avoid overruns, and that is to really soft cost most of your projects. We've never done that. We've tried to, at the outset of every project and every LTP and AP, create a really tight budget. We know that that's not always achievable. We know that sometimes council itself makes decisions to delay things by requiring further consultation. So I think there's a little bit, I mean, there is the old adage, there's the rub of the green, and we are committed to driving the best performance we can out of the organisation, out of the market. I think we're not trying, and I'm sure you're not suggesting this, we're not trying to gain this outcome, but we are trying to make sure that as we work through any given financial year, we are being as accurate and as upfront about where the costs will lie for the various projects that we're delivering.
Yeah, equally, we want to reward the organisation for delivering on time and on budget. How do we do that when we're neutralising the incentives?
Well, I don't know that we are neutralising the incentives. I mean, because ultimately, what you've asked us to do is put up a program. We put up a program which we think is accurate and viable at the time we put it up. We all know the challenges of the fact that some of our program is something like often 18 months old by the time we begin those. I don't think that that we are either rewarding poor performance or not rewarding good performance in the way we do things. I think the achievement is do we achieve the program that we set out to achieve. And council has a choice around those in each instance.
We've been asked to either accept or reject a reforecast, and we can't separate those that we do. I mean, look, I appreciate we're probably not going to solve this problem today. I have raised this in a number of forums, and that we are making it impossible to get it wrong, so to speak, because we reforecast and we get in any, and there are...
Question. So can I give you also another example? Today there are two items in this where we've reforced funding to enable us to advance projects that were not part of the council's program. So is that a reward or is that a punishment?
Well, as you know, we've sought to...
Rhetorical.
Sorry. We've sought to enable and reward agility and quick wins, if you like, and taking opportunities as they arise. That, those things that, like Valentine Road, are clearly things that we, as a council, have decided and clearly want to progress with. Look, I'm still looking for a way forward that gives us the chance to not, and I want a better term, to bed in the errors that we make along the way, and I haven't been given that. So.
So my first question would be just off the back of that, and I've asked for it a number of times, can we have somewhere on the website where we track the changes? And I know Councillor Fox has a good system for tracking for each individual project, the ongoing bring forwards and deferrals and so on, so that we can see, anyone can see when they go to the website, how things have changed over many, many years, so that things that get left behind, we can track it. And is that possible?
It does get really challenging when you think about inflation, because there's always adjustments every year, so it's difficult when you compare previous LTPs.
I mean, I guess the alternative is that we don't do it, and then it becomes things. For example, one of the ways facilities that we move is just delay. We had the same thing with the Milky Reservoir, and it's really helpful from looking at rates and DCs and everything perspective to understand where things started, how long they've taken, and what things keep getting deferred, even from a Wanaka versus Queenstown perspective, sometimes. So, no, I am asking a question. Is there not, I mean, there must be a way to do that. I mean, Councillor Cox has has a spreadsheet. I don't know how you account for inflation, but maybe you don't need to. I mean, we're bringing forward future inflated dollars at the same dollar value. So,
Yeah, so at the moment we look at all the years in the current decade, which is how you easily bring forward things. But once you move to the next year and the next year, everything inflates up by 1 year and 1 year. It's going to get difficult if you're comparing even just one LTP from the start.
yeah.
You're talking about from the beginning of the project, which some projects have gone back, 10 years before I even started, which was 10 years ago, for example, Ontario. So to show those changes, you have quite an enormous spreadsheet on the line.
Just stating, I think we have to find a way to do it because not doing it isn't, it's just not helpful. I've got a few more questions, if it's okay through the chair. First one, no, that can probably be somewhere else, I think. Capel Ave water main extension, what does stopping it do? I don't have a good understanding of one of the councils probably do, but deferring that it's a water main, and I understand the reason why, it makes absolute sense. I just wanted to clear up that it's not impacting anybody's water supply.
I don't believe so. It's just the roading and the water needs to be done together because we don't have the funding.
So Jeremy, I've got Simon in the back there. Can answer that question.
Yeah, no, Jeremy's answered correctly. The lining with the road budget that's been well done, Jeremy.
Thank you. The other one is around the South East Wanaka conveyance scheme, the wastewater. There was a comment in there about the existing spread of the budget being sort of not really a realistic expenditure profile. I think that was the words that we used, but now all of it, I think the whole 8.41 million is in year 29, year 29. To me, that doesn't seem realistic either. Why are we not spreading it so that we can plan, or do we not need to?
Which project was that?
South Water, Wanaka conveyance scheme,
page 66.
Does that make sense? So at point 24, and if you look at the graph, the chart, all of that funding will now be in year 29. It was spread over 4 years. I agree that seems like a long spread, but sticking it all in 1 year doesn't provide any funds for planning in the years before.
Yes, it does.
Does it?
The bottom
revised LTP. Ignore me, I'm not reading my charts right. Thank you. And I think that covers it. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. NZTA changes. It talks about in there that we're maintaining our operations. I'm just curious around the environmental management impact. We took quite a hit around withdrawal of funding for slips, trees, grit and CMA. Are we able to maintain the levels of service?
So we'll come back in the December council meeting with the actual implications of those diversions of funds. So this is really just about getting the budget right to match what NZTA have given us. But yeah, next meeting.
But not how we're actually going to cover that.
We will certainly, like other councils, struggle because we will have added costs that historically would have been covered by NZTA, which we are now having to meet from rates and then all from other CapEx which we'll need to defer to do that. So the most recent example is some of the cost from the recent storm damage is no longer covered by NZTA.
Thank you. And which probably that was, would we have previously picked up any funding around things like the Arthur's Point Reservoir land stability through that being environmental impact?
Not that one, but I think the key thing is Catherine's outlined is this gets the budget to the right place so that we've got a realistic budget. The team are currently working on what is the program shifts that we would want to recommend to council.
Thank you. And through the chair, just one last question. Paragraph 20, it talks about the lake haze scheme will be challenging if we don't make this investment. What is challenging about the lake haze scheme? Without investment, what will we face? Bringing forward this under telemetry, wastewater waste supply. Paragraph 20.
If I can speak to that. So it's just we've got, sorry, can you hear me? So we've got investment underway, and so it enables us to actually fully utilise the money that we've spent to date and get benefits.
So without that investment, what's our risk?
So it means currently we're managing across 2 SCADA systems, and we're working towards bringing them together into one that is modern and supported, whereas we're currently dealing with a system that's becoming outdated and will be unsupported from 2027.
Thanks.
Might be a question?
A couple of quick ones. One's just to confirm for me what, probably clarification, paragraph 11 on page 63 says that there's a decrease of 13.12 million across the 10-year period, including 18.87 million across the first 3 years. So from that, I guess there's some increases in years 4 to 10 to bring that decrease, or to reduce that decrease.
So just check 4 to 10. Four to 10 is an overall 5.8 million increase.
And the other question was the transport model replacement. Talks about the council workshop on the 10th of September, and then it also talks about it's probable that the new transport model will be co-funded by NZTA and the Otago Region Council. The 10th of September was very shortly after we got the notification about the LTP funding. Is this affected by that funding, or is there other sources of NZTA funding for this transport model?
I think it's pending a deal with ORC as well, like a joint sector arrangement.
When you say
I think it's separate to the LTP funding.
So it's not affected by that. Thank you.
Another question I was going to make.
All right.
Having just gone through the model yesterday, and it sounds like it's still being funded.
Right, moving further. Do we have a mover? Thanks. Okay, Lyle second. Right, discussion?
It's just around a couple of the projects, just the risks that are getting flagged up, just the constant delay of MEF, and I understand the reasons why we're not getting this materials recycling, but it is giving cost impacts elsewhere, by the looks of it, reading other papers, and public excluded. So, yeah, just a statement, it would be really good to really prioritise this and ensure that we get this moving and that there are no more deferrals, because I see us in a really risky position with not having an option if something goes wrong. It's gone on for way too long. And the other one is just around the Kingston stormwater. Obviously, budget increases already, and obviously this is in the hands of the scope and design of the future stages is in the hands of the developer, and already we've run over 2.5 million. So I'm just really concerned that we keep a really good eye on that one. And yeah, I think that's it. Otherwise, well done for weaving your magic, making it happen. It can't be easy with a constrained budget, and I would really like some sort of tracking of deferrals for the future. I don't know how. Thank you.
Hi, just a comment saying, thank you for the reforecast. I've gone through it in great detail. I think during the LTP process and after the LTP, we got a bit of a criticism for hammering about not making any changes. At that time, you didn't have, or we weren't able to, but this reforecast shows that we're listening. We've got the Valentine ponds over the soil. We've got Laggett water in the reforecast. We've got Stanley Street car park, which are all significant issues during the LTP. So I think you've done well. Weaved your magic, as Sabrina has said, in a good way. We're going to take the NZTA changes that are going to make it very difficult in areas, putting a lot of the requirements, especially in the first 3 years, and subsidised if we want to do anything. So it's going to be challenging, and we're going to need some more magic to be woven. But thank you very much. It's good to get some of those projects into that reforecast and bring forward that money, so thank you.
I just want to say, yeah, well done. When you look at that Luggett one, I was particularly impressed with that, actually looking at how we can utilise a temporary solution into a more permanent solution. I think it was a great win and to see a financial implication and improvement just goes to show you working together as a team with finance and P&I. And overall seeing a reduction in spend for the year and also over the 10 years. We're under a fair bit of pressure from Central about going through our costs. It's good to see you're really working through and bringing them down. I look forward to December when all the team working together to further bring our costs down. So thank you.
No pressure.
No pressure at all. Katie, your last one.
I was just going to echo, I guess, what you guys have been saying. A wise woman once said in the LTP sessions, it's not a no, but a not yet. And I think this is a great reflection of the adaptability throughout the adversity that we're facing and constant changing of the weather, whether it be the NLTP or sports field reports. But the thing I've recognised about being in this role is that so much of it's relevant to partnerships, and there's only so much that we can do. But I've been really impressed with how nimble we've been able to be. Even considering that, my precious paper lab has been pushed back, it's, for understandable reasons, and I just fully commend how hard it is to be in this position, and also how well you've done to make it work still. So, yeah.
Thank you. With that, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? None. Motion carried. Thank you. Maybe we just take a 10-minute break, German, sorry. Give it a fresh air and go for 2 hours. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is just the final report on the review of the previous Class 4 and TAB gambling policy from 2018. The report includes an update from the submissions hearing that was held earlier this year with the intention of adopting the new Class 4 gambling and TAB policy in 2024 with the noted changes as outlined in the executive summary there.
Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. I was just interested to read out. I previously recalled, refresh my memories, that we were either capped or had a sinking list, or has that never been the case?
We've never had either of those.
But it was either difficult or unlikely there'd be new machines or new licences given or something, no?
The legislation changed several years ago to limit the number of machines a venue could have to 9. Machines of up to 18 that were already in existing premises were able to be maintained.
Yeah.
But this, we cannot add more than 9 machines to any new venues. There was a revision of the policy done in 2018 to allow relocation of machines to other venues. Yeah, essentially.
That's what I recall. Okay, and so that is there a need to, or should we be considering a cap or a sinking lid policy, or do you think we're reasonably safe at the moment?
We've got a bit of natural attrition occurring in the district, and we have done for a number of years. There's some information outlined in the report to that effect. And it's also being discussed with the panel and worth considering for an extra review in 3 years.
And in the meantime, given that we've got natural attrition, do you think, are we reasonably safe to say, well, if there was a sudden turnaround in that, we might have to bring it forward a review or change our position on the cap or sinking lid if there was a sudden rush? Would we be able to do that?
The reviews can take place within 3 years. They have to be done within 3 years.
Yeah. So if we suddenly had a turnaround and we had problems with the number of licences that were being sought, we could seek a review earlier.
Yeah.
But there's natural attrition anyway.
Yeah. There was some information provided during the submissions that indicated that online gambling was the main increase in gambling, not machine gambling as such. So that's why we're potentially seeing the
I'd like to see that key.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was really interested to read in paragraph 12 there about the reduction when you're over 21 years going from 136 machines down to 37. Do you know, is that, you may not know, but you know, what the driver of that is? Is it the regulations or the policy or the growth of online gambling?
The last premises that removed its machines in September this year, that was comments that they made was around the legislation changes being recently made was a driver for making things more difficult in that realm, having to train staff. There's also concerns around money laundering, gang activities. So there's unwanted business activities associated with the premises that they don't really want.
Thanks. Now there's a comment there on page 82 about what does it talk about? Public submissions are provided for when the policy is reviewed every 3 years, and that's, you know, in response to removal of the ability of, you know, the notification of people being able to submit. And I took that as being, you know, submit against a particular license application or, you know, a certain venue. How does the public get to submit, say if they've got an issue with a certain venue or provider, when that policy is reviewed every 3 years? Is there a facility in that policy review submission process to do it at that stage?
Not for individual applications, there isn't. However, there would be provision to lodge concerns with the DIA directly.
So you could do that in any 2 years?
Correct.
So that sort of justifies, does it, the removal of that public notification requirement?
Along with the fact that the public notification requirement is not legally required for our level of approval.
And not workable either, obviously, with the time frames.
That's right.
Yeah, I also had a question about the sinking lid policy, because it says in there, obviously some submitters mentioned it, but it does say from the summary that that can't be considered because it wasn't consulted on. I was surprised by that, because what I thought I recalled when we must have had a workshop on this, that sinking lid type of policy was discussed. I was surprised to see that it's on the list. Was there a reason why it wasn't included?
Not that I can provide you with information at the moment. I can get that to you if you'd like it.
Because it just seemed to me that it's perhaps something that could have been a consultation. I know you said that they were naturally decreasing in number anyway. Attrition. Yeah, it's obviously something that has been raised, and maybe next time around it might be included. And then my final question was, it talks about societies. Particularly comes up under option 1, the advantages of option 1, societies are willing to operate gaming machines. When you say societies there, what sort of organisations is that referring to? They're obviously operating their own gaming machines.
Yeah, so societies effectively look after and own the machines. And then, yeah, essentially.
So they're not owned by the venue itself?
No, the venue signs a lease on the machines.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Lisa?
Thank you. I picked up on the withdrawal that Airtime with about with the change to more online gaming. One of the things we had around facility-based gaming was the social consideration and payback from different fundraising and grants from machines, also the requirement for counselling and support and help for problem gambling. With the list in e-gambling, is there any mechanism at all that we still are able to put levers of social consideration or benefit out of, it seems we're losing the bat, but we're also losing any ability to provide support to people that might be still gambling online or reaching our community benefit. Is there any comment you could make on that?
I think unfortunately the legislation hasn't caught up with technology. We are quite limited in terms of our policy and what we can consider. It's not to say that the legislation wouldn't change necessarily within the next 3 years, and then with that next policy review that may be considered. Or it could be something that we could look to consider going forward. However, a lot of the online gaming is run overseas. So that sort of limits the effect that we can have on that to a degree.
Yes, my concern is that we're sending gambling other into homes where at least if it was visible in the community before. And that's a technology thing that I just don't understand if we could have any impact on or not.
I think the comment that Sian has made is, I suppose, reflects the fact that that's not location specific. That's a real concern. That's something that DIA are looking at. They also are concerned about the loss of revenue, because that revenue is heading off overseas. So it's something that, as Sian said, the local gambling policies that we're allowed to have, the Class 4 gambling policies, will never address that. But there's a need for New Zealand's wider legislation to catch up with the propensity to online gamble. Yeah.
Just a quick one, and I won't go into the residential area and stuff this time, but just for the next review, just in terms of process, because obviously, and I'll state it, the purpose of the Act and one of our objectives is to facilitate, or one of the purposes is to facilitate community engagement, and if we can't comment on individuals, we have to have a really good opportunity to comment on the review, and the scope needs to be really wide. So, when you go out for next review, will you be doing a pre-consultation to understand the scope of the issues that you would like to discuss around gambling before developing the proposal?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're happy to consider that, but can't bind the current council with what might happen in the future process. So we'll note that it will also depend on what's going on in the community in the context of gambling in general at that point. If there are a lot of complaints raised, it'll be an assessment at that time of engagement. But I'm happy to know that you're indicating that pre-engagement would be beneficial for this process.
Yeah, and regardless of whether there was pre-engagement or not, would you be considering the cap in order, or a sinking lid in order to meet the criteria around facilitating public conversation around the things that matter in this policy?
So, Mr. Chair, I think my answer is the same, that I wouldn't want to bind the future council, and we were happy to note that, but we can't say now what.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, I hear the point, but at the same time, I guess I'm asking, how do you comply with the purpose of the Act and the objectives in the policy if you don't ensure there is some way that you're going to have a broad scope? So I guess my question is not specific activities that you might do, but how do you see yourselves meeting the purpose of the Act and the objectives in the policy around facilitating community engagement?
I think you raise a fair point that it needs to be considered, but we're in a space as between central and local government obligations here, and so yes, it will clarify what my answer is at that point, and how wide and what we do on community engagement in terms of wider priorities of council and what the issue is at that point. I guess I'm maybe not understanding your question. Well, you're asking us to ensure that the scope is wider next time, and beyond saying that yes, we will consider that. I'm not sure what your question is.
I think wouldn't ultimately that decision be one for council to make how wide it wants the scope to be. We would provide policy advice based on the evidence we have in front of us around the nature of gambling in the community. Council can make the call about how wide it wants that consultation.
And I guess this time, noting the comments around the table, if we'd understood scope at the time that the statement of proposal was was approved, if we understood that the comments from people who were concerned about gambling and the request to consider sinking lids and caps, if it had been understood that we were excluding that, I'm not sure that the statement of proposal would have been agreed. So we went out.
Don't think you can say that actually.
I said I can because
No, because then you're suggesting that councillors weren't making an informed decision.
I said I'm not sure, and I'm not sure because we get a number.
Question.
I'll speak to it later. Thank you.
Do you want to move it?
There's a
I'll move it.
Yep, thank you. Second it, sir. Thank you, Harry.
So now, Councillor White.
Discussion?
Only to, I mean, look, we can get caught up in the technicalities. I think we've got to view this as a tool to managing problem gambling in our district. While there is problem gambling, it's not necessarily in the counties and the class 4 venues that, you know, at any significant level. We've obviously had decline in that sector. I mean, I'm comfortable with where we're at based on where the problem's at. If the problem changes, then we need to adapt to that. And you know, clearly at the broader level, the government or the legislation hasn't adapted to the online gambling. That's not something we can't control at the moment. But you know, look, it's not even remotely as prevalent as it is in other parts of New Zealand or other parts of the world. And I think we're in a very privileged position of not having a big problem. And you know, I think we're appropriate at this point.
Just a comment, nothing to do with substance, just a few editorials on the document, but I can deal with that outside. Directly with you, is that okay?
Just through the chair, just some information for you. I was on the hearings panel along with Councillor White and Gladding, and just referring back to my notes, the 12 months to June 2023, only 2 new people presented for problem gambling in the region. Potty Brewer had 59. Thank you.
Yeah, look, I'm just repeating myself here, but I think it's really important if there's a purpose to facilitate community engagement, and we don't have it on individual applications, that it has to be at the point of the review. And so at the point of the review, we have to make sure it is wide open for people to pose, I guess, the suggestions or to ensure that they can include things that they want to include. The best way to do that, I suppose, is to do pre-engagement, to find out what the issues are, and then to scope the statement of proposal with options around what those issues are. I don't see another way to achieve the purpose of the Act and the objectives that we have in the policy, so I really hope that's the case going forward. And just next time, I do have some concerns around with the definition of residential area, and I did raise it at the time of the hearing. Still concerned that the settlement areas might not be captured with this reference to the district plan, and the way the paper's being worded around the specific chapters that you would refer to as residential. So concerns mostly for Glenorchy and mostly for Luggett around what could happen in those areas under the current definition. So I would be really keen to see in the next review that definition of residential area come up again, and just make sure we've got that appropriate. Yeah, that's all. And look, thank you for reflecting the position of the panel really well in that report. It was excellent.
Yeah, I was also on the panel. I was the chair, and I just want to echo what Ferg said, is that yeah, currently there isn't much currently a problem or an evidence problem in that area. There's also a natural sinking lid currently. When we discussed it as a panel, if that changed, even within the 3 years, we have the ability to bring this forward sooner. It can only be reviewed in 3 years. So I took comfort in that and feel comfortable where we landed on this.
And with that, I'll put to the vote. All those in favour? Aye. Against? None. Motion carried. Item 5. Page 88. Elderly housing audio. Before I hand it over, I just want to acknowledge Councillor Cox, who was the chair, but also got all the you.
else to do.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, we're bringing this item before you. We're working through the SCP process for the elderly housing portfolio management. The report here is kind of the final kind of stage of that, hopefully, to get like a decision on the recommendations of the future of the elderly housing portfolio.
Any questions, councillors?
I did have a question, just for clarification. I was a little bit confused about the Arrowtown land and where it's on a fee simple title, but is the option is still to lease it to the Housing Trust initially for a 20-year period?
The advice that we've been given is like kind of, it was endowment land. So what we're kind of proposing to do as part of that is basically lease the buildings to the trust, and then we will work through the subdivision process to kind of carve out the land around those units in the Arrowtown, and then once that's all kind of agreed and approved, then we can kind of transfer the land.
Okay, so yeah, because maybe someone will see that, but if they're on fee simple title land, it's on a bigger block though, but that also needs to be subdivided off.
Yeah.
Right, and that land, there's an issue with just going and subdividing it now, you need to resolve.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I think through Mr Chair, the ECP and the council decision confirms the transfer of the housing block to the housing trust, which then makes that purpose, that's the purpose of the endowment land easier to work through.
Right.
Otherwise we'd have to make the argument as to why we were subdividing it for some future purpose that was not as yet undetermined or undecided.
Yeah. So this is doing it to sell it off for
Sorry?
Versus doing it to sell it off for profit.
Yeah. That's my understanding. I understand why we've done it that way.
I'd like to move it.
Like to move it?
I'd like to second it.
Oh, there we go. Discussion? No discussion? Oh.
Just a really quick comment. Essentially 12 or 15 years of trying to get the care around this sorted, and really like the social consideration of support for tenants in these. And I've also found it fascinating learning more about this piece of land, originally given, I believe, for a quarry to Arrowtown at one point. So the fact that we're still negotiating between elderly housing, baskets of blessings use, and the preschool boundary being clarified towards public good and win-wins for our community, I think any of those outcomes is way better than the earlier vision of a quarry. So thank you for all your hard work, and we've certainly found it fascinating trying to get it to this point, and I'm stoked that maybe next week someone might move in, because every month I field calls from our village saying, why is that apartment empty? So thank you.
I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Nil. Motion carried. Thank you. Ladies, file item 6, page 107.
Thank you. I have a two-seater tour with me here from Wynne Williams, legal advisor. In terms of the report, this is a really technical matter because we've gone through a streamlined planning process. The delegations don't exist for us to go back to the minister and to come back to us with some suggestions. We've gone through those suggestions and had them legally checked in relation to some provisions that the ministry asked us about. We've consulted with the ministry on those, and they're satisfied with what changes were made in principle. So today is just about getting those delegations to be able to respond to the minister's suggestions.
Questions?
The only one that I had, and I guess it's probably part of what's still being fleshed out, is the focus on the transport trigger rules and the restriction on applying for code compliance certificate.
Yes.
I don't know, I mean, it's pretty common for people to live in a house before it's got a code compliance certificate anyway. But also, code compliance certificates will be issued under the Building Act, and my understanding is that if the house is built and meets the code, then you can't not issue a code compliance certificate. I would wonder whether there wouldn't be another way of, before the transport issues are sorted out, the house, a house say, can't be built, and that would be by not issuing a building consent for it. But then again, I'm not sure if you can issue a building consent, you've got a compliant application.
Yeah, a couple of things here. Firstly, the intent of the plan change put through the recommendation and sent to the minister is being retained here, that the intent is to not have houses occupied before the transport infrastructure is in place. But there is an intent to also understand that through the development sector, being able to start to construct houses can take a significant period of time, and the infrastructure can be developed in tandem with that rather than waiting for one and having these gaps. So that's what the ministry came back to talk to us about, and we've made some subtle changes to not have just CCC, but also to have a non-occupation of those dwellings as part of the proposal, and a mechanism to put in place through subdivision of the sites that ensure landowners are fully aware that they can't occupy the dwellings until the infrastructure provisions are in place.
Just following on from that, so it talks about mechanisms, but there's nothing in there, right? So how do we, and I've sent this question, but how do we ensure that the mechanisms that we're going to use are lawful? And what are those? Like, we must have considered what are some of those mechanisms we might choose to put into conditions. Are they lawful? Are there any risks around them? And then, in line with that, why would we not put those mechanisms into the rules? Because I do foresee developers challenging our conditions around, preventing occupancy. So why would we not cement them in the plan?
Well, in terms of cementing the plan, we can discuss that if we wish, but the key thing here is that it is legal. We've gone through the process to understand that the provisions that we're proposing are legal. We've also, as I said, discussed those with the ministry. In terms of everyone knowing what the situation is, it's a good question, because when developers with this area, this is something that isn't usual. It's a different type of area we're trying to develop here. We're going to produce a practice note. We already have draft conditions that will be volunteered by developers to meet this requirement. And it's been shown to be in cases in New Zealand that this is a legal and not an ultra-various mechanism to use. So the intent of the net, the mechanism has been shown to be legal for all case law that's used similar type of mechanisms. The practice note is being set up for both staff and landowners to be able to understand what they can do to meet the requirements of the plan. Like any decision and any application we have, developers can always challenge the types of conditions we put in place, but that's up to council to assess the potential impacts of what's being proposed versus what's being proposed to mitigate that in terms of the transport infrastructure, to mitigate the effects of occupied dwellings.
So what are those mechanisms? Because the rules are going to say such mechanisms may include, but may not be limited to, legal instruments in the title of the property. So presumably legal instrument of the title of the property is legal. There may be other mechanisms. What would they be? And the other one, I guess, is how in real world practice, how do you enforce it? Does that make sense? You've got a building, it's built, you're leaving it up to the developer to make sure that building isn't lived in, or can we actually?
Yeah, it's very common to have legal instruments to require something of a landowner, and they are fully enforceable.
Yeah, they're enforceable both in an RMA context and then depending on the mechanism also in a civil context sometimes. The reason why it's not prescriptive about those mechanisms, the council has in mind what they will be, but you sometimes want to have some flexibility because the developers might come along with another proposal that might be appropriate in the particular circumstances. That point is also why it's not appropriate to put them in the rule. Just as any of the provisions trigger a requirement for a resource consent, that then leads to conditions when they come in and get a resource consent. So this is no different to any of the other types of conditions that will be imposed on these developers, in the sense that rules trigger requirements that then lead to conditions.
Sounds great. Looking forward to seeing the practice note and what the options might be. Thank you, appreciate it.
Just trying to get this going.
My question is kind of around the same thing and how this is going to work in practicality, because the thought that the infrastructure needs to be in place before people lives here does give comfort to those already, and I know lots of people in this room struggle with the traffic every single day, getting it in and out at the moment. But how does that work in practicality? Because we've sat around this table and listened to NZTA saying we're not going to do anything until there's people living here. Now we've been told we can't have any people living there until the improvements are made. So how does this work? In practical terms, like who is going to pay for those upgrades and when are they going to happen? Because as much as I'm pleased that this is what is being said, that the infrastructure has to be in place before anyone lives here, it will be horrible to have homes empty when we have a housing crisis as well. So can you just explain a little bit how that is going to work and who's going to be responsible for making sure that happens?
Yeah, sure. I just want to stress to council in terms of the decision today is a delegation's decision. It's not about the appropriateness of these rules and how they're going to work, but I'm happy to try and help. Look, developers will be eyes wide open in relation to the specifics of this development. This is something that's quite unique, well not unique, but I think unique in this district in terms of the process gone through. And there are significant requirements that will be really clear for people to understand when they go into this development. For a developer to move ahead and be a viable developer, they need to have those properties sold, they need to have them occupied and keep going. So there will need to be plenty of discussions and decisions made and agreements in relation to how the infrastructure is going to work prior to shovels going in the ground, because anybody not doing that obviously will have a serious problem with how their balance sheet works. How all that's going to pan out, I can't tell you today. This is something that we need to work through. I think having the rules and the plan is what we need to ensure our community is protected from inappropriate development, and that's the key part of the provisions that we put in place.
I could just add one further point to that. There was a lot of evidence before the hearing panel all about funding of the infrastructure. There'll be a combination of different mechanisms. Some it will be developer funded, others rely on Kotahi and the QLDC and relevant stakeholders, including ORC when it comes to public transport. So that evidence has all gone to the hearing panel. That's all been considered. This is really about a very technical change to the drafting, and of course you're just approving a delegation.
Just a comment, I mean the core of the transport solutions do exist as part of the Queenstown package, so that is a funded Wakataki project. So
it's not a Wakataki project.
Well, Queenstown packages.
Under the first part of it.
Yeah, it's shrunk, but it continues to include it. Well, look, you can speculate, but it's funded in that package and is identified as part of that package.
Sure, that was just the roundabout.
Yeah, then I said it's not the whole thing, but it's the core of that.
That's fine.
I mean, I'd just say that the existing funded parts of the package do not afford the benefits that are required to deliver Ladies Mile. So we've still got to, I'll turn it into a question, but is there an opportunity to make sure that the obligations in any condition make it clear that they fall upon the third-party agencies like NZTA and ORC to deliver those rather than obligations on council? I'm just trying to frame this as a question. We're best to ensure that this is fought out in the hallways of Wellington between the Minister signing this off and the Minister for Transport than it is between us and the developers.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but certainly not at this point. That's not a possibility. We need to work through any applications that come to us. And as you know, the development that's proposed, the potential effects that will be the agreements that happen at the time. So it's far too early for us to say how that will actually work specifically. But I do understand.
Is it fair to say that we could be waiting some time for NZTA to fund the remaining parts of the package required to deliver Ladies Mile?
I don't know at this point in time.
Remember, we're only voting on a delegation. Okay. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Lyle. A seconder. Thank you, Matt. Discussion?
Not really discussion, just a question that didn't get asked and they won't be allowed to ask, but I'm just interested that the delegation is limited to the changes here and there won't be further changes, I would assume. don't think I was willing to.
Discussion.
So there's no, there could be further changes potentially.
There's
Hang on. There are the discussion. Sorry.
What I would say is we've already delegated the responsibility of this decision or recommendation to the hearings panel and to the minister. This is, we've already done that. They're now coming back and wanting some further advice, and we're delegating that responsibility. So we're delegating the delegation that's already been delegated, and it has to be held. It's a bit unfortunate, I think, and I will say this, that I think the minister was a bit slack in hitting the ball back to us on this, is that the process was such that the recommendation, and it was sitting in the minister's hands. The minister has control to fix this in any way they choose fit. They just had no idea what to do with it, so they sort of hit it back to us. So, yeah, I think we need, I'm happy for it to go back to the minister and to further discussion, find a way forward that satisfies them, because that's where we're at. So,
A little bit unfair on speculating what the minister was thinking or not.
absolutely, I'm happy to do that. So.
Review. Hopefully it won't take 7 months to come back. Anyway, with that, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
I'm going to go against just because it's not limited.
Okay. Motion carried. Item 7, Easter trading. Grade 113.
Having a particular report is very much just to highlight a couple of things in it. The AFCO will to have a policy to allow trading of beverages on Easter Sunday, so the other ones, as of good morning, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, Christmas Day, until the act councils can do anything about that. Enforcement of the act and the policy also sits with central government, not with QLDC. And what's proposed here is essentially a rollover where the shops could be allowed to open on Easter Sunday if they wish, but they don't have to. And the act also dictates civil consultation on it, that it needs to happen on a special consultation.
Questions?
Yeah, thank you. I reading this, it was a little surprised that it doesn't actually solve all our problems in that the Easter Friday thing still exists. So, am I correct in that Queenstown get an exemption still?
No, that's been repealed.
That's been
So
repealed.
this 1990 Act replaced that, so now we're stuck with this ability to make a policy just with Easter Sunday. And the update is that there is a private members bill that would remove the need for councils to do that, but it hasn't moved up anywhere in the order paper since this paper was written, so it's highly unlikely to
So
be in place briefly.
I went back through a bunch of the newspaper articles relating to charges or, the supermarkets and things that had disobeyed the rules and been put a slap over the wrist in the past, and it did relate to Friday and Sunday, most of those situations. So we're still going to end up with a partial compliance. We solved part of it, but not the other part. And that could still be subject to charges under the current situation from DIA.
For the Good Friday.
Yeah, for Good Friday breaches. Okay. Obviously it's unfortunate we can't solve the whole problem. We can only do what we can do. So support the progressing the consultation.
So just to go back to Peter's point, so the Good Friday trading is covered by, and it was covered by Nicholas being repealed, so that where we get the situation where Queenstown businesses can trade on Good Friday, but not.
So that's solely covered by the act, council's got no ability.
Okay, and then my question to do with this one was, it mentions in here employees have the right to refuse to work on Easter Sunday. How do they know that? Are they told, is that in this policy that they have that right to refuse, or under general employment rules?
Through your chair, it's a valid question that, council would have no information in relation to because we don't collect information on employment relations relating to that. It would, we could play a role in communicating, here's our new policy, and employees have a right not to work if that was something that was
It's not defined by our policy, though, it's defined by the legislation.
By the Employment Relations Act.
It'll be by the act that governs the trading, but it would be an obligation on all employers.
Right. Yeah, that's my concern is that, often people that are asked to work on weekends, they're not necessarily in the strongest position when dealing with their employer, and how do they know they've got that right to refuse to work on a day such as Easter Sunday?
Okay.
Just a question in relation to that, could we make it a policy, could we put it into our policy that we advertise it widely? Yeah. Is that something we could do? I don't know if that would be going beyond what you're suggesting, Gavin, but could we write something like that into our policy?
Through your chair, that's often the council decide to do. I would propose that might be done as an outcome of a hearing panel submission, and the panel making recommendations based on submissions received.
And there will be scope to do that?
Yes, given that it's a notification, it's not a requirement.
Okay.
I'd suggest.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Page 10. Okay. Hang on. Any more questions?
Just phrasing this as a question, what would we do that would be over or above the mechanisms already in place under the Employment Relations Act 2000 to have employers advise their employees? I feel it's covered well in the Employment Relations Act, and I don't understand that there would be any levers that would be able to apply in addition to that. Could you think of any?
Through your chair, we would have absolutely no legal authority over this. I'm purely thinking of our communication for the community.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a mover? Well, we're going to get some names. Well, actually, well, I've got 4 here. 4 councillors that were so eager.
Oh, my hand wasn't up actually.
So, look, I need 4 councillors.
Oh, 4. Are you wanting the 4? You were moving it, and now you're on the hearing.
I know, I was in the trap room.
That's what
3
you
more.
volunteered for. You can go ahead.
2 more. Thank you. 1 more. Thank you, Ben. Right, so the 4 councillors are councillors Gladding, Cox, Guy, I've forgotten the other Wong. Brain fade. Okay, now I'll ask for a mover. Cody, you seem so eager. I know you're not prepared. We'll have a seconder. Thank you, Nikki. Any discussion?
I'll just comment on that now. Jan says that in order for someone, an employer, to exercise the rights afforded by the policy, they need to be aware of the policy. So by exposing the obligations within the policy should be sufficient. We just can't be the police of employment relations along with all the other things that we do. I think we need to stay away from that, but other than that, all good.
Right, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? No. Motion carried. Thank you. Item 8. Parks Park Reserve, page 130.
Don. Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Don.
Can I just introduce myself?
You certainly can.
Thank you. Sorry, I feel like doing everyone. Don Harrison is the new planner in the Parks team, and he comes from the Resource Consistency in Wanaka. So really pleased to have him, and he's got an interesting report to present to you today.
Hey, how we doing? Yeah, appreciate there's a bit of history with this site in this area, down the other side road there. I guess what we're seeing today will hopefully be quite straightforward in terms of just the vesting of the piece of land in council. But otherwise, we'll take the report as read and field any questions you guys got.
Yeah, thank you. Could you just clarify the ownership of lot 200, 285, 284, 283? Are they council reserves currently? It's not actually listed as such on the scheme plan. Or are they part of Remarkable's part of it?
All the green?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question.
It's up here.
Yeah, that's
That's
how
after that.
the land being subdivided.
Okay. And just so how are we the grantee over lot 200 if we're not the owner of it?
No, that's the grant, sorry, I can jump in.
Yeah.
It's a grantee to the easement. So it's an easement in gross.
Right. The and just relating to the public forum item from the two ladies, can you just speak to that? Whether there's any the context of that those points?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you appreciate the Youngs have a long history with RPL, and were involved in the planning tribunal decision back in 92. The recommendation from that decision was to obviously grant the scheme plan or the plan change, and they addressed the vesting of the reserve through the requirement for council and RPL to enter into a developers agreement, which is subject to this piece of land. RPL, under that developers agreement, can vest 32 square metres of reserve land at a time, as they do each subdivision, and that this parcel of land is their required reserve land contributions for the entire scheme plan, and the purpose of that was to ensure, well, to avoid the need to identify a piece of reserve land every single time they did a subdivision. What they
gave a credit sort of.
Yes, so they've essentially got that whole square or rectangle of land is their credit for their entire subdivision. This was agreed to in 1992, so obviously not necessarily what we'd agree to today. Definitely not what we'd agree to today. And that developers agreement implemented the planning tribunal decision. It did not have a sunset clause on it, so there's no time limit in which this needs to be undertaken. Hopefully I'm answering your question. The reason why we're now bringing this part of the reserve to you today is we would have been bringing 32 square metres, but we did go back to RPL and said, can you just vest the whole lot? The 5 years is up. They said we can't do the whole lot until we've resolved the wastewater infrastructure situation. However, we're willing to vest half of this, which is essentially where we are today. So not.
So was it the expectation? Did they have a different expectation that they'd graded reserves created along the river corridor or something? Is that what they were suggesting, or is it, or that's just their understanding of the deed was different?
So in terms of the reserve land that was to be vested in the 1992 decision, so
just trying to understand what was the expectation of those of the submitters.
All the land would be vested as far as public forum. That it was all of the land, and I think there's a concern that any change in the agreement giving effect to the planning tribunal decision.
So let me just get my head around it completely. So today we're just vesting the green bit, or the green and the yellow.
Just the green.
And the blue bit is still theirs to be vested in the future.
Correct. Yeah.
And the pressure put on them to do it all at once just wasn't successful, and we've got no. And is there, because we're talking that this is their reserve contribution per whole entire subdivision, but based on, and is there any expectation that they'll put any other reserves in this space? Put it this way.
We continue to work with RPL on their future intentions, and yeah, we are working with a legacy decision, but still trying to get good outcomes. There are some other conditions and requirements, but it is a bit grey, so yeah, like that's not a very concise answer, sorry. But
No, that's okay, it's complicated, and I talk to them, also know it's a bit complicated and intense.
Yeah, I mean, 1992 was a long time ago, and the policy backing was very different to what it is today.
Yeah. And if we said no, and just push back and said, no, you just need to do it all, like, well, we can't do that, like.
We've explored all our options, and because there's an existing developers agreement, which is quite clear, but doesn't have a time limit on it, then this is the outcome that we've agreed with RPL at the moment.
Just a quick one on the reserve contributions too, Mr. Chair. So, doesn't seem very much, but they have reserve development contributions on top of this too?
This fulfills that.
This is it?
Yeah. Can I just quickly add that the public can access this land is maintained by RPL, the trail goes through it, which is also maintained by RPL. So in terms of the way the public use the land currently, it's no different to the parcels either side of it, but it does, the reason why we asked for all of the land was because we're doing a reserve management plan for that whole area, and we wanted to be able to include all of that in our future plans. So.
Okay.
Through the chair, I had some questions set to go, and I think some of those have been answered, and some of the responses so far. One was around why are we dealing with two parts, part now and a part later, as opposed to the whole reserve, which has been answered. Lots been played out over a long period of time. A lot of paperwork, a lot of decisions, legal dealings, as we know. Have we been able to get across a lot of that, and how relevant, and where do we sit with those past decisions? Have we sought legal advice on that, have we?
Yes.
Are we comfortable with where we're sitting now?
Yes.
And the other one is around the updated development agreement, because it's been a long period of time that this has been slowly moving, and under the watchful eye of Penny and Rachel, who, you know, along with the Young family, have made a huge contribution out there. Is how does the updated developers agreement compare with what was there previously? So is it more of a winning situation for the property?
It's an addendum to the existing agreement. The existing agreement still stands. This simply records this scenario and makes reference to the reason why the remaining parcel hasn't been vested and when it will be vested. So it just provides more information in detail. It doesn't change the final outcome.
Thank you.
Oh, I mean, yeah, not really. I mean, it doesn't relate to whether I will or won't agree with this, but just interested, that trail goes through their land, obviously, that further around the corner. That's obviously they're also intending to keep that as trail, and are there any issues with that?
That's subject to the same maintenance agreement that is in place.
Some legal rights.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? I didn't.
If you look at the strip,
Yeah.
between the river and the green bit, there's a road, and that actually marks.
No, I'm talking about in the corner. So if you keep going along the trail down the river, and it takes a bend.
Yeah, it's a road.
Oh, okay.
Full
So
road.
it's all okay. I can't see that on here, but that's on the wrong services. Thank you.
Just a quick one. What's the blue?
That's the
Features.
That's the bit they're not giving up.
Yeah.
the blue area is the so the green's what we're asking to be vested now,
Yeah.
and the blue's what will come once the wastewater pump station's been.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So we're
Yeah.
going to get a pump station. How's that reserved?
Yeah, so there's already an existing pump station
Yeah, that's been
further
there.
down. Yeah, and so that's in a flood prone area. So in the 1999 floods, that was inundated. So this new area has been agreed upon as it's higher and it's out of that sort of floodplain area. So it's going to be a better location for it. So there's already a pump station within the reserve, and it's just going to be moved once that infrastructure is upgraded.
Decision for another day, I won't push the case right up.
I just had a question though, so next to the blue hatched, like blue shaded, like these lots 604 and 603, are they also part of Michael's Park land, or what are those?
There is existing reserve land that's already invested.
Those other bits that have been done previously?
Okay. No further questions to the mover? Thank you, Vicky. Seconder, Barry, discussion? None at all. Put to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? None. Motion carried. Thank you.
No specific matters other than the standard matters of the adoption of the annual report, the appointment of new directors, which is matters that council's already decided on. We've had no other advice from QAC about any other items, and the adoption of the auditor's report as well. And so a recommendation that I'm able to sign here as the proxy for council. You'll see the Throughout Cultural Trust have requested a council representative to sit on their board. It's proposed that the mayor be appointed to that, so seeking your approval for that. And I think further to the discussions earlier this morning, we've seen the recommendation which was referred to in the first report today regarding from the Wallacroft with the Community Board regarding 101 Valentine Road.
Questions? Mover?
Yep.
Me, seconder. Ferg, discussion? None. All those in favour? Aye. Against? No. Thank you, Chief Executive. Right. Public excluded. I move that we move into public excluded. Thank you, Barry. Seconder. All those in
Can
favour?
I just say, I just wanted to say, before you all vote, I just wanted to say thank you to who has done this. I've just been looking at other councils and some of the reasons and stuff for going into public excluded, and we've improved the way we do that, and I just wanted to say congrats to the staff for giving really good reasons that are understandable for moving into the next.
We're just about to all say aye,
So,
preempting your votes, the councillors. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Nil.